Welcome, everybody, back to another special episode of the Amateur Experts Podcast, where we are experts about absolutely nothing. I'm your host, Landon Oliver, here with my co host, Andrew Scott.
Yes, sir. Good to be back.
Yes, sir. Always great to be back. And we got a special mock draft version 2 episode today, including some of the trades that went down last week, San Francisco, Miami, Philadelphia, as well as the Sam Darnold news that broke this afternoon. So we'll be going over that as well. Give you guys a little more recent take on what we think the teams are going to do in the draft, not what we're going to do. Just kind of going more on what we feel the teams are going to do. And we're really excited to get into this. And then obviously we're going to have one more mock draft. We're going to do the week of the draft, kind of be our final mock once all this stuff goes down. But this is version 2 right now. Some similar stuff there in the top 10, and we've got some similar picks. Not as much similarity as last time, though, so I'm excited to get through some of the differences here.
Yeah, let's get right into it. Just jump in with number one and just get this, short and sweet, get this out of the way. We both got Trevor Lawrence, quarterback out of Clemson. We know Jacksonville's got Trevor Lawrence, quarterback out of Clemson. Urban Meyer has pretty much said as much, to the media up to this point. I don't expect any surprises or anything.
Yeah, they didn't even go to the pro day of Zach Wilson. Like, they didn't even have anybody at the pro day.
Yeah,
so, I mean, whenever you know where you're going, there's no sense in wasting your time.
Yeah. So, best quarterback. I don't think either one of us disagree. Best quarterback in the draft. Like, there's no, Zach Wilson should be there. No debate like that to be had, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think with us, I do think there's some teams that are having that discussion. From some of the stuff I've read, some teams do have Zach Wilson as their first quarterback on the board, which is surprising to me. I think there's a lot more disconnect between the media and the fans as opposed to how teams think. Obviously, we both know that based on some of the moves they get made, and all the fans and the media are like,
All
what
right.
the hell are they doing?
Yeah.
But I think for normal everyday fans and even smart fans, I think everybody's kind of consensus is Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah. It feels like one of the bigger consensuses in a while. So
probably since Andrew Luck, honestly.
yeah,
It's probably how that goes.
yeah. I wasn't even in that consensus, but I'm in this one though.
You're wrong on that one too.
Hey, I don't know. Hey, one of those guys is still in the league.
Is he though?
So all right,
I don't think
number
he
two.
is actually. I think he's a free agent.
He is a free agent right now, but he'll probably get a backup deal somewhere. So New York Jets, this is where you had mentioned that this is what we think NFL teams are going to do, not necessarily what we think they should do, which aren't the same thing. This is where it right off the bat starts to kick in because I'm still really going back and forth on if I think Zach Wilson should be the second quarterback taken. I think he will be. And I mean, after his pro day, I forgot who it was that reported it, but somebody said that they were told the draft officially starts at pick 3 now. Like, we know Lawrence is going 1 and we know Zach Wilson's going 2 now after the pro day. So it seems pretty set in stone that this is where the first 2 picks are heading. But I don't know if that's going to end up being the right choice whenever it's all said and done, though. I'm still really torn on 2 through 4.
Yeah, I do think Zach Wilson's kind of, to me, he's the clear number 2 guy here. I think some of the other guys might have. I think Zach Wilson has as high as an upside as some of the other guys with a safer floor, which I know you might not agree with, but you throw on the tape, and not even the pro, because I'm not a huge pro day guy. Like, you watch guys throw in shorts and
with no defense.
Yeah, with no defense.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it is what it is. You throw on the tape though, and the guy, he can make all the throws.
He's fun to watch.
Yeah, he can make throws from different angles. From scrambling, and of course everybody sees what guys like Stafford and Rodgers do with the crazy throws and the no look passes and stuff like that. Those 2 guys that kind of originated that stuff along with Favre from back in the 90s. Those guys that have done it for forever and are known for doing that, not one person that just invented it in the last year. Um,
Uh,
I'm trolling. I'm trolling. I'm trolling.
yeah, I know you
But
are. I
I was
know,
trying to
but
get a
but
reaction out of you. I was waiting
in
on
all,
you to jump in.
no, I
Um,
mean, I knew where you were going with that one. We'd have to have our man Aaron on the show
I
to get a
know. I
reaction
know.
out of that because I know
I'm
that's who
just
you're really
trolling. I'm trying to
trolling.
get a reaction.
Um,
Uh,
but no, I mean, like he is a lot of fun to watch, man. But like the big thing that scares me, and it's not a huge sample size because they haven't played a lot of them, but his splits against like actual
big
good
game. Yeah.
competition
Because
versus
BYU has a very
like
soft
BYU,
schedule.
yeah, like the splits are like it's not like they're just like kind of different. Like he performs a little bit better against the worst competition. Like it's significant splits, man, and that makes me kind of nervous because there is no BYU schedule in the NFL, and this isn't. And I'm not sure how much better the Jets are than BYU. So like you
Yeah,
know,
yeah, and that's the thing is like because
that was a
we
joke. They're a
it,
professional football team. They're better than BYU. But like,
right.
I have to make that clear before somebody takes that serious. But it makes me nervous, man. And but he's a lot of fun to watch. He's electric. He could easily be quarterback two of this class. But I do feel like Justin Fields might be safer. Um, but and then I feel like Trey Lance has the highest ceiling out of all of these guys not named Trevor Lawrence. I think Trey Lance has the highest ceiling, but he by far has the most risk too. So it's like these, and then Mac Jones, I'm out. I mean, he's not terrible. I don't think he's an awful quarterback, but he's definitely quarterback five for me. So he's not really in this discussion. But Trevor Lawrence is quarterback one, and then I'm a mess with two through four.
Right.
It's really
Yeah.
tough for me,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah. And see, it's a little more. See, 3 through 5 is kind of where it goes for me, and I think that's kind of where teams are thinking along.
It
Along the
definitely
line
sounds like
also.
1-2 is kind of set in stone.
Yeah.
Which brings us to before we move on to the Jets, a point we need to talk about is Sam Darnold did get traded to the Carolina Panthers for a late pick this year and then a couple picks next year. I mean, I thought Carolina got a good value for
I think it was
what
a
they
very
gave
good
up for
deal.
him.
And I think now, I mean, granted, Carolina, they don't have the greatest offensive line, and we have them
Right.
addressing that here a few picks from now.
Yeah.
But he has reunited Robbie Anderson. The
DJ
loss,
Moore,
yeah, DJ Moore. I
Christian
think the loss.
McCaffrey. This is by far the best set of weapons
Oh
he's had in
yes,
his career. Like
absolutely.
not even
And
close.
something that cannot be overstated here is the coaching staff that he will be going to,
And
uh,
getting away from. Now, granted, like
getting away from
not the staff the Jets has now, but being free
Adam
from
Gase.
Adam Gase, you
Yeah,
know, it could,
it's addition by subtraction.
yeah, he was already getting an upgrade at the Jets because Adam Gase was fired. But now, you know, I mean, Robert Saleh looks like a promising head coach, but he
But we
goes to a
don't
head coach
know.
now where
And
we've already seen the improvement on Carolina's end.
yeah,
So
and
yeah,
and I think having a guy like Joe Brady there,
yeah,
who some people are talking about here, and maybe even possibly next year, is going to be a head coach. We see the
yeah,
work he did with Joe Burrow in college. We see the work he did with Teddy Bridgewater last year and some of those other guys. And granted, they weren't, like a very, top tier offense, but the guy's known for, getting the most out of his quarterbacks,
right,
and the coaching staff they've put together there is very, very highly regarded within football circles. And I
yeah,
think him going to a team like that, not only getting away from Adam Gase, but getting to learn from some of the guys like that is
and the
going to benefit
weapons,
him.
man.
And
Mm,
and yeah, and he's got weapons, and I I can't I can't wait to watch him because I actually have
this
Sam
is
Darnold in a dynasty league, in a 32 team dynasty league that we run. I
yeah,
actually have Sam Darnold as my
right,
quarterback, and I was debating, what's going to happen because I figured Zach Wilson's going to the Jets, and I'm like, well, what am I going to do at quarterback now? And since that trade broke today, I actually kind of got a little excited where it's like, like I could possibly be set at that position because I think Sam Darnold is an extremely talented quarterback. He's still
yeah.
23 years old. I mean, he's super young. He's as young as Trevor Lawrence is. I mean,
He's 1 year older than Mac Jones.
yeah,
And he, yeah, I mean, this is a huge W for Sam Darnold, without a doubt. To me, we'll find out if that's the case for Carolina as well. But I'm in the Sam Darnold boat too. I
I
mean,
am too.
as far as that draft class went, I had him number one of that class. You know, Josh Allen is laughing at me now, um, but yeah, I'm a Sam Darnold fan, and I think that there's a lot of talent that we haven't got to see put to use yet. And I do think that he landed in one of the better spots with a mix of offensive minds and offensive playmakers to where he's got a really good shot to make himself some money right
Yeah.
before he was set to
Uh,
hit free agency.
yeah,
So
I think if he can clean up some of this decision making, I think that's his biggest issue right now. Some of the decision making, because you turn on the tape and the guy can make any throw on the field. It's almost very similar to a Zach Wilson. He can make the off-platform throws. He can escape, uses his legs. He can
yeah,
extend
I think
plays.
I think Wilson might be a little bit better on the run.
Yeah, I think he's a little more agile and
Right.
faster and stuff. But as far as movement in the pocket, I think it's a very underrated, Sam Darnold trait is his movement in the pocket and
I
escaping the
agree.
pressure.
Yeah, he's
And
not a
Lord,
statue by any
yeah,
means.
yeah, and Lord knows he had a lot of pressure most of his career. So, um, yeah, definitely excited to see that, and um, that very it solidifies kind of New York's pick there with a quarterback. We know
Yeah.
they're going
Yeah, there's
quarterback.
no question anymore.
Uh,
Yeah, and there's no question with number 3 either with the huge
Yeah,
move that San
because
Francisco made.
San Francisco made a big move as well to move up to number 3 with the Dolphins. Obviously, Dolphins getting first round pick next year as well out of that deal, along with some other picks. And we're not quite done with the Dolphins because so they moved back from 12, or they moved back to 12, and then moved back up with a team we'll talk about here in a little bit as well to get back up to 6. But San Francisco locked in at number 3. We both have them taking Justin Fields out of Ohio State. I know that is your worst nightmare.
It absolutely is. Yeah.
Is Kyle Shanahan getting a quarterback like Justin Fields? And when it comes to this guy, so you hear different things. Justin Fields, I've heard some teams have a 4th round grade on him, which
That's terrible.
yeah, which I mean those teams more than likely are the Jets, the Jags. Your perennial losing teams probably do. But and I've also heard some teams have him, right behind Trevor Lawrence as their number 2 quarterback. So the opinions are very differing, but you can't deny the talent. And when you hear people talk about his biggest downfall of Justin Fields, you hear about, oh, well, he's a one read quarterback. He can only throw to his first read, then he takes off. Well, if you really watch the tape and you look at what Ohio State asks him to do, a lot of those RPOs are he's throwing it to his first read because that's
Right.
generally the only read before, or you're handing it off to the running back, or you're taking it off himself and running. So I mean, whenever most of your plays are like that, the guy can make any throw on the field
I mean, the dude's he's fast, he's
very fast.
accurate, and he's got an arm. Like the one read thing,
It's so overblown for a quarter.
we're gonna get to find out really quick if that's a legit thing or if that's
I
just an
and see, I don't
Ohio
think it.
State
I
thing.
don't. I think if you actually watched Ohio State games last year and what he was asked to do in that offense, I think it's pretty quick. I mean, you can pretty quickly dispel that.
It almost feels like that.
It's
It's
like
just
they're
like
trying to knock him down.
well, it's like it's been Lawrence and Fields for so long, wanting to for like a couple years now. It seems it felt like everybody knew that this draft it was going to be Lawrence and it was going to be Fields, and it's almost like there's like Fields fatigue or something that it's almost it's kind of like what I've been seeing with Panay Sewell lately too.
Yeah,
Is like I've been seeing him drop down into like the teens and shit. I'm like,
yeah, yeah. There's
well,
no way.
what is happening?
It
And
yeah.
it's
And a lot of
eh,
it's people just clicks.
yeah, it could be that too for sure. But yeah, I mean he's accurate. He's got an arm. He's got the rushing ability the teams look for. It's just he feels extremely safe to me. It could end up not being the case, but and there's been a lot of for in terms of we said that this is what we think that the teams are gonna do. A lot of people from what we've been hearing, and God, I hope is the case, is that they moved up to take Mac Jones at number 3, and I think that that's a case of just a lot of smoke. I just I mean like
Yeah.
they even went as far as to send Kyle Shanahan to Mac Jones's pro day, and there was a clip that I saw that was so funny that it was Mac Jones.
Oh, he missed the
He
guy, and
missed it,
Shanahan rolled his eyes.
at his pro day, like there's nothing out there. He just overthrew this guy, and then the camera immediately went to Shanahan, and he just like looks befuddled, and it's like they're just going
So
out
the
of their
reason they
way.
did that too is because it was almost the exact same play of Jimmy G overthrowing.
Yeah,
Um,
right. Yeah,
Good win, or
so
was it was in the Super Bowl.
it seems like that it's just a small, like I can't imagine them
And
moving up.
that's who he reminds me of too, Mac Jones. It's like if you're gonna trade up for a quarterback, why not get a dynamic
Yeah,
weapon like
I
Justin Fields that you can use instead of Jimmy G 2.0? I mean,
yeah,
it's
I can't imagine that being the case. So I faded. I didn't fade the smoke here in a minute. I'm going to lean into. I'm going to lean into to some smoke here in a couple picks, even though I don't think it's what should happen. But on this one particular, even though it's not what I want to happen, I want them to take Mac Jones. I think it's just a lot of smoke, and then
yeah,
Justin Fields
definitely.
is the pick here.
And and here's the thing with these quarterbacks, and I know we've talked about it a million times. So much of these quarterbacks' success whenever they get drafted is where they land. It's not their talent. It's not, I mean, obviously talent plays a role in it, but you can be
Yeah.
the most talented guy in the world and you get thrown into a bad roster. And most of the teams that are picking up at the top
If you're
are
coached by
bad
Adam
rosters.
Gase.
Yeah. Like, I mean, most of these teams that are picking up in the top are bad rosters.
Hmm.
So, and unless one of these teams moves up in a trade like Kansas City did, like San Francisco did, you're generally not going to a stable organization. There's usually a
Right.
lot of turnover. You've got new coaching staff. There's turnover pretty much almost every year with a lot of these organizations.
Yep.
And you're going to an unstable franchise like Sam Darnold, who's had multiple offensive coordinators, bad coaching, no weapons. I mean, you make it so hard for these young guys to succeed where you can be as talented. I mean, there's no such thing as an untalented NFL quarterback. Every quarterback that plays a snap in the NFL is one of the top 100,
0.1%.
yeah,
Yeah.
of people. I mean, even Dan Orlovsky, like it doesn't matter who it is.
Yeah. He
That
might, and
guy,
I don't think he's in the top 0.1% of NFL analysts on TV, but he
right?
was
But
at
I'm just
one
saying,
point,
like, as far like
but
people
at
don't
one point
understand how talented
yeah, he
some of
was a
these
top
guys are. To
0.1% in the league at one point, or,
Yeah,
in the
like to be
world.
a quarterback in the NFL and
And
to be a starting.
he was out here running out of bounds in his own end zones and
Yeah,
shit. You
yeah,
know, but
but yeah, but at the same time, like he
that's how
started.
hard it
He
is to be an
played.
NFL quarterback.
Yeah, it's insanely difficult. And whenever you're a young guy, no matter how talented you are, if you go to an unstable organization, it makes it that much harder for you to succeed.
Yeah.
And so much of what these guys are going to do, that's why I'm so excited to see who San Francisco does draft at quarterback. If they do draft Mac Jones, do I think Mac Jones can succeed in there? Absolutely. I think Kyle Shanahan has proven very,
If you can get to the Super
convincingly.
Bowl with Jimmy G,
Yeah, I think
you
pretty
can make something
convincingly,
happen with
Mac
Mac
Jones
Jones
has
too.
proven, or Kyle Shanahan has proven, he can succeed with any quarterback he gets his hands on. I mean, the guy
Mac
had Nick,
Jones has
the
proven that
guy,
if you put him in a favorable situation with,
he can
weapons
succeed.
and stuff, that he
Yes.
can succeed as well.
Yeah, and
So
I mean, like, oh, I mean, the guy made Nick Mullins look like a good quarterback. I mean, it's
yeah,
and so I think pairing him with a dynamic weapon like Justin Fields, who has
so
so much
scary.
potential, I think that's just an unreal move, and I'm really excited to watch it
I'm
play out
not.
if it does play out. I know you're not, but I am. I'm super excited to see if it does happen. So enough on that. We'll get off the soapbox. Move on to the Atlanta Falcons here, number 4, and this would be a home run pick for the player. I don't necessarily know if it is for the. I mean, obviously, I think it would be for the franchise, but I think there's some different areas that they need to address outside of this because they do have so many pass catchers
Yeah,
right now.
to your point, this is a perfect team to where if we were projecting trades, there's no shot I'm picking Atlanta to pick in this spot, because I don't think with Matt Ryan getting his contract restructured the way he did, it seems like they're going to be locked into him for a
For
couple
another couple
years.
of years, yeah.
So I don't see them being in the quarterback market, and there's going to be teams looking to move up for that.
Trey Lance or
If Mac
Mac
Jones
Jones
does
is
get pick third, if the rumors are true, and Justin Fields and Trey Lance are still on the board at the 4th pick, Atlanta's phone is going to be ringing off the hook. A team like Denver or maybe New England, like their teams are going to be looking to move up to that number 4 spot to grab a quarterback. So if we were projecting trades, this would have been right off the rip. I automatically would have projected them to move back a few spots because they've got a ton of holes on defense. that they need to fill with multiple picks.
Yeah, and
And
there's not,
so,
and this is one of those drafts too that, it's very offensive top heavy. There's not
yeah,
that slam dunk defensive guy like a Miles Garrett or,
right.
some of Clowney or like one of
Khalil
these guys.
Mack.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There, I mean, there's not guys. Which I mean, obviously, I'm not saying Clowney in the NFL now, but I'm saying when he was drafted, he
It
was
was
kind
a
of a slam
clear,
dunk. He was a
yeah.
clear best defensive player, and that guy doesn't exist in this draft because if
Doesn't
he
feel
did,
like it. No,
yeah,
there'll probably be
that's
one
where it
that
would go.
emerges where it's like, wow, I can't believe that guy didn't go earlier. But just it looks very offensive heavy up
Right.
top for sure. So
So we do
with
have
it,
them. I'll say we do have them picking Kyle Pitts out of Florida. If this does happen,
it's gonna be a
it's
lot of
awesome. It's
fun.
it's awesome. It's awesome.
It says tight end next to his name, but it should just say OP for offense or OW for
OW for
offensive weapon
yeah, that
or
that
OP for
guy.
overpowered. Like
Yeah,
that works too. Like this guy
yeah,
is OP.
yeah.
He's
And you put him with Julio,
Julio,
Calvin
Calvin
Ridley.
Ridley, Arthur Smith, offensive mind coming in to just destroy and Matt Ryan is
Is
more than capable, man. There's a reason
yes,
why they're comfortable with going in, with restructuring his contract and moving forward with Matt Ryan. Like he is still a very capable quarterback.
and
Um,
especially with those weapons. I mean, it's if we
yeah,
do end up with Kyle Pitts, I
man,
mean, it's
yeah, this will be a slam dunk landing spot for Kyle Pitts
yeah,
if this happens. But I think he deserves to be drafted this high. I don't think he will become drafted though, because like we already said, I think quarterbacks are going to reign supreme in this, at least in the top four.
yeah.
So I don't think this is where Pitts lands at number 4. It could still end up being Atlanta a little bit later. But we said we're not going to do any trades. So as it broke down, this is a lot of fun, man.
Yeah, for sure. And as somebody with the number 3 pick in our dynasty draft, that I did make a move for a little bit of a questionable move, according to some of the Twitter pundits that I put it out there.
Oh, really?
Um, yeah, I did. So obviously, there's some dynasty sites on Twitter, and I tweeted the trade out to them to get some of the fans so they could
Hmm.
vote on it to see, and there was about
Hmm.
70 something votes on that trade. I traded James Robinson, Michael Pittman Jr., and 202 to move up to 103. There was 82 votes actually, if you can see it on the screen, and that is what it was 70-30 in favor of the package over the 103.
So that is kind of team dependent too, where the people that are voting on that don't realize that
Yeah,
you have
they
Jonathan
don't know
Taylor,
the
you
the
have
full
DeAndre
roster and
Swift, like
stuff.
that James Robinson was your running back 4 at the time.
Yeah, exactly. So I
But
mean, yeah, I've still, I need a wide receiver too. My tight end spot's kind of, I got Hawkinson, so it's kind of good. Which I mean, Goff's there, but
yeah,
there's not that
Hawkinson
many
as a
weapons
player is
there.
good, but
Yeah, but I
yeah,
mean, yeah, if Kyle Pitts goes to Atlanta and he's there at that number 3 pick, it's going to be hard, especially
I
with
can't lose at the 104. I'm just going to say that because regardless of who you don't pick, I will be more than gladly to pick him between Kyle Pitts and the guy that
yeah, it's
I'm going to be talking about next. You're going to be talking about the pick after that. But between Kyle Pitts and Jamar Chase, man, like those two guys as playmakers, oh my God.
slam
Like,
dunks.
yeah, like
Yeah,
it's as far as a wide receiver one and a tight end one in the same draft, I can't remember a better like just
yeah.
top end
And Kyle
talent, man.
Pitts, when it comes to fantasy too, I mean, obviously, you take a tight end. Everybody says, it takes tight ends, 2 or 3
At least a
years.
year, if not two
Yeah,
or three.
yeah,
Yeah.
to actually hit. But I think if Kyle Pitts ends up in Atlanta, I think it's Bomb
Yeah.
Ray
He
right off the bat. I think and he's much more of a offensive wide receiving
he is an
weapon.
offensive weapon. He is
Yeah,
not just a tight end. I mean,
yeah,
he can do tight end things. He's not like a terrible blocker or anything like that by any means,
but
but
you're not lining Kyle Pitts up the block, to check
you're
mark
lining him
defensive
up to
ends.
make plays,
Yeah,
and
like,
he's gonna make them.
and the guy's wingspan too. Can we just talk about that 7 foot wingspan? Like, just I'm so excited. I'm so
I
excited.
can't wait, man.
Even
I
as a
can't
fan,
wait to
even if
see
I
where he
don't end up
lands.
with him on my team, just
The
as an
NFL is going to be
NFL
more fun
fan.
to watch with
Yeah,
Kyle Pitts in it.
yeah, definitely. So let's move on to Cincinnati here, and you can talk about your guy. This is our first difference of opinion here. But I can definitely see why you're going where you're going. I
Yeah,
think so. There has been a lot of smoke about this pick with what they're going to do. Um, I'm just of I'm of the thinking. you've already seen Joe Burrow get hurt. He's recovering because you have not addressed that offensive line. I think as long as Cincinnati on that draft day is looking at Joe Burrow in that weight room rehabbing, I don't see any way they don't pick up. I have them taking Penei Sewell, offensive tackle out of Oregon, to move over and protect his blind side. The guy needs protection. You have them taking Jamar Chase, wide receiver out of LSU, explosive playmaker, especially after that pro day, 4.38, 41-inch vertical, almost an 11-foot broad jump. I mean, and it's not just the pro, or it's not just the combine numbers. You throw on the tape, and this guy has been
I mean,
roasting people.
We know Justin Jefferson, right? Like the
Oh
guy that
yeah,
just had
he
like
is
the
he is
best
on my
rookie season
since
of
Moss. Yeah,
yeah,
and
yeah.
he is on
Okay,
my team.
that guy got outplayed by Jamar Chase whenever they were on the same
Well,
field together with Joe
and
Burrow
you look at some of these guys that he was doing that to, and they are the cornerback ones on their team now
in the
in the
NFL.
NFL. They
Yeah,
are
he was dogging
lockdown
NFL
cornerbacks.
corners
Yeah, and
in
he was
college.
first round pick, high draft pick corners. He
Yeah, while
was
out producing a first round draft pick wide receiver who ended up having an incredible rookie year. Like
the
he's
guys.
otherworldly.
Yeah,
And
and then you
so
combine that with the combine numbers. I mean, it's
yeah.
just
So
it's
this was another case where I bit into the smoke and where I went with what I think they would do versus what I think they should do. What I think they should do is make your pick. Even with the Riley Reef signing and the fact that they drafted a tackle in the first round last year, one of those two guys can move to guard and you can let Sewell do his thing at tackle. Like you can move pieces around to make room for a tackle of Sewell's caliber. And that's what I think they should do. But with the chase smoke that's been going on and the fact that Joe Burrow has reportedly been in their ear saying, hey, like you saw what I did with him at LSU, come out to, now bring him out to Cincinnati. Now, granted, Cincinnati is a far way away from being as complete of a
right.
NFL team as LSU was a college team at that time whenever they did that. But this is I leaned into to this smoke to where I think that this could be a possibility that they get sucked into watching the Burrow and Jamar Chase tape from 2019 and saying let's just bring that magic to Cincy, and the fact that they did sign a tackle in free agency and they did draft a tackle last year. I agree with your pick. I think that should be the pick, but I think that this is what the pick's going to be. And I mean, I'm not going to be mad about it. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch
Yeah.
if
I
it is
mean,
the case.
I don't disagree with you
But
at
they
all
don't have the
there.
thing is they don't really have a need at receiver either. Though. Like
Exactly, and see, that's
T
where I leaned
Higgins,
more towards because Higgins had a great
T
rookie
Higgins
year.
is very capable. He's a
Obviously
great
Tyler
receiver,
Boyd's
and then
there.
Tyler Boyd is a very good receiver. So
They did lose
yeah,
John Ross, and I think that third
I don't
wide
even really
receiver
know if that's a
spot.
loss
They
the
did
way he
lose
played.
AJ Green, but those guys, they kind of are what they are at
Yeah,
this point. Um, and so,
but
they could use a wide receiver 3, but I mean, it's
we both agree that
it's a
that
luxury
we
pick.
both agree that these will be the guys they'll be choosing from.
Yeah, and then
And
I think if they do end up with Jamar Chase, I do think it is a very similar situation to what Dallas had last year, where
they didn't need CeeDee Lamb, but how do you
but
let
they
CeeDee
picked
Lamb
CeeDee
sit there?
Lamb,
Yeah,
and then Dak Prescott got to watch CeeDee Lamb perform from a rehab room.
right.
So, which granted that's a freak injury and stuff like that, but I mean, it's very because even when Dak Prescott was playing, that defense was getting roasted. Like CeeDee Lamb did nothing to help. I mean, I'm not gonna say he did nothing to help the
He
team
was a
win
great
games.
player, and he
But
made, but
it
yeah,
didn't translate to the win column. It's exciting to watch. It's cool for fantasy football. Does it really help you win ball games?
right. Yeah, and
And
if this mock draft was, what do you think they should do? We would have the same pick on this one too.
yeah,
But I bought into the smoke of what I think they might do on this one, which was the only where we differentiated. But
yeah,
it didn't
and
take long for either one of us to take the other one off the board.
yeah, because I was gonna say the
So
next pick we just reversed them. So I
yeah,
actually have Jamar Chase going to the Miami Dolphins at pick 6. So Miami did trade with San Francisco, moved back to 12, and they traded up with Philadelphia. Philadelphia gets a first rounder from next year, um, and Miami gets back up to that 6th spot to take. I believe they are going to go wide receiver with this pick. I think it's kind of a clear 6-man draft where you've got 6 very clear,
top six
options
picks.
there.
Yeah.
And then after that is where everything just kind of, you know, you put the options where you want, but it's it's definitely kind of a clear top heavy draft.
I think Trey Lance ends up being in the top 6 just because of teams trading
Trades,
up.
yeah.
But as far as like top end talent though, like yeah, there's some really, really good top end talent, on paper, in this draft. So um it wouldn't be as exciting for me to see Jamar.
No,
Like
because
I don't want Jamar Chase to end up in Miami, but I definitely could see this happening, and I think there's a really good shot that it ends up happening too.
yeah, yeah, and I agree because I'm not a huge Tua fan at all. I wasn't coming out last year. I've never understood the hype around him, even in Alabama. He just
He was my quarterback too by default in that draft, just because I wasn't a big Justin Herbert guy, and
yeah. I mean,
that's
I wasn't
another
huge on Herbert.
guy that's now laughing at me. But Joe Burrow was my clear number one, and then after that, it was
Yes,
just like, eh, in terms of that. But I mean, they seem committed to him though. So if I do think you should either go one of two ways. You should stack up the offensive line, or you should give him plenty of weapons to throw to, which is what we ended up doing. Essentially, you gave him some more weapons. I gave him, hey, an incredible offensive tackle. Now, granted, they have spent a lot of draft capital over the last couple of years in the offensive line. But if the draft does shake down this way to where he's on the board, unless Miami somehow trades back again, if Jamar Chase and Kyle Pitts are both not available, I think you have to take Sewell at that point and just continue to build um, your offensive lineup. But I like your pick, and if it was up to me, we would be, if we were doing what we think should happen, me and you would be the exact same through 6 picks. So I don't have any issue with how this is shook out
right.
so far.
Yeah. So now we'll move on here to number 7. We have the Detroit Lions. We both have them taking Micah Parsons out of Penn State. Had a fantastic pro day. Obviously, I think right now he fits a need for them, and he fits as one of the best players on the board. That's just a team that really needs talent all around.
Yeah.
They're in a very clear rebuild, so I think they help their defense. They pick up a guy who produced, who's got fantastic tape, who blew away his combine numbers. He did what we all thought he would do, and I think he's been rising. There was some fatigue as well on Parsons as well, where
Yeah,
some
because he
guys
set
had
out
to
last
come.
year, right?
Yes, he did.
So I
And
think that played into it some too.
yeah, and so I think there were some guys that had him going in the 20s, and I actually had him going later in our first round mock, but just seeing how things have played out, I did move him back up into that slot.
Yeah,
Number
this is the same spot I had him going from our first mock. And honestly, for me, it was between Micah Parsons or um, wide receiver 2, which for me is a battle between Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith. But just looking at, like, we talked about, this is what we think that they will do, and just listening everything I've heard Dan Campbell say. There's no way you can convince me that he's going to pick a wide receiver over a defensive player. Like the whole like biting kneecaps and all that shit. Like this
Yeah,
guy is definitely picking the defensive player.
yeah,
But this is another team. We talked about Atlanta. This is another team to where if we were projecting trades, I'm not projecting Detroit to pick right here. I think this will be the last of the quarterback move ups to where I think that they could move back. This is another team similar to Atlanta where they have more than their fair share of holes to where just this one pick is not going to solve all their problems.
yeah. And I don't think there's a huge drop from Micah Parsons to some of the other defensive players in this draft.
No, there's a couple corners I like a lot at the top, and then honestly, the other linebacker for me, the guy out of Notre Dame, I butcher his name all the time, but the Jeremiah Owusu Koromora,
Yeah,
I love watching him too, man. Like I think that he's a great talent, and then Patrick Surtain and J.C. Horn. I mean, there's talent on the defensive side that's about to come off the board. I think here soon. Um, to where, if Detroit is truly committed to this bridge quarterback rebuild method to where you let Goff play for a year, 2 years tops, um, and do kind of like the slay. And I mean, based off the long-term contracts they gave to their new GM and their new head coach, it leads you to believe that they believe they're in this for the long haul. Long haul is going to be a couple of years.
yeah.
So, trade back, add
Get
more
more
draft
picks.
capital.
Yeah,
You guys are going to suck you're going to get a high draft pick next year. Um, so this seems like a good position for them to where they could either build the defense or they could grab one of these top receivers off the board. But I don't, when it's all said and done, I don't think they'll be picking here anyway. But if they do, for me, it was between Micah Parsons or Devontae Smith, I'm struggling between him and Waddle. But right now, Devontae Smith was my wide receiver too. So that was the way that I was looking at it. And then whenever I thought about Dan Campbell, I was like, yeah, I just got to put Micah Parsons in there because he's drafted a defensive player.
Right. Um, so number 8, Carolina, obviously with the Sam Darnold trade, that takes them out of the quarterback market for this year.
Right.
Um, and I have them taking, we both have the same guy here, Rashawn Slater out of Northwestern, offensive tackle, who's been just skyrocketing up draft boards.
Yeah.
It seems like he's just been absolutely skyrocketing. And I think if you are going to take the risk on Sam Darnold, like I said, they do have some good weapons there, but they do need some work on the offensive line. I think,
Absolutely.
I think, this is a great pick for them. I think it's just another great pick for Sam Darnold as well. And I think it
Hmm.
allows them to really see kind of what they have with him at that position.
Yeah, this one makes too much sense. I think we both had Slater going to the Chargers at 13 with the last mock, which made a lot of sense too with how things look. But with the changes that have been made now, Carolina looked like a team that was in the running to trade up for a quarterback. I don't see that happening now with the picks they gave up. Not incredible picks, but it's clear they're going to see what they have in Darnold for at least this year, and they need to do it. They don't need to, they're good at receiver, even with losing Curtis Samuel. They've got the best running back in football, one of the best, if you don't agree that he's the best. So it's just a matter of protecting him. And Rashawn Slater to me is the clear second best
And
option,
and he
and
is
and,
and
and he
he's an
could very
absolute
well be the
road grader
most.
at yeah, he's an absolute road grader at that position. So this not only helps Darnold, it helps McCaffrey as well.
Right, right. And it was really intriguing to me. I listened to Andrew Whitworth popped on the draft show that Bleacher Report had and talked about offensive line with them.
Yeah.
And just
Nasty.
listening
He's a
to Andrew
nasty dude.
Whitworth, I mean, he's such an intelligent guy, and he's obviously, one of the best offensive linemen in football for a decade now, maybe longer. Um, and hearing him talk about Sewell and Rashawn Slater, and he basically what he said was, the offensive tackle out of Oregon has the opportunity to be the best in the long run, but as far as pro ready day one, he thought that Rashawn Slater was actually a more pro ready offensive tackle than Sewell, which is for Carolina that's perfect
Yeah,
because
and
you've
Rashawn
got one
Slater,
year of Sam Darnold left, so you want to find out what you've got, and so hey, insert a pro ready left tackle into your offense. And that's, I mean, Sam Darnold couldn't ask for a better fit at the
yeah,
eighth pick to me. I think that
and
this is like a dream
and
come
and
true for
Slater,
Carolina.
he actually does have something over Sewell to me, and it is my favorite trait for an offensive lineman is he wants to demean you. He wants to ruin your day. He wants to bury you.
Pancakes
Yeah.
everywhere.
He wants to bury you into the ground. Like he will finish you. He will lay on top of you. He is mean. He is nasty. And if I have an offensive lineman, that's what I want. I want
Right.
somebody who's going to he wants to turn on the tape and know that he did everything possible to make you look like a bitch.
Right.
And so I'm a huge Slater fan. So now we have number 9. If it does end up playing this way, I can see Denver moving up for this selection here that we made at number 9. We both have Trey Lance coming out of North Dakota. I think this would be an awesome pick for the Broncos. That's another team that, with the way that they've attacked their secondary and some of the weaknesses on their offensive defense, this offseason, they are one really elite quarterback away from being a very, very competitive team.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they've got an incredible defense. The secondary looked like a clear weakness before free agency. They turned that into a strength with the re-signings and then the signings that they made. Um, and this would have been a team to where if we would have projected trades, I would have 100% had them moving up with Atlanta and
Atlanta.
taking Trey Lance at number 4. They've got they've got one of the most fun offenses outside of the quarterback possibly in the league with Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy and Noah Fant and Tim Patrick, Melvin
Alberto,
Gordon, yeah, Albert O, Melvin Gordon, and now Mike Boone, who is a like
Boom Squad.
don't sleep on Mike Boone, man. That man is going to come in there and eat with Melvin Gordon. They've got all they need is a quarterback on the offensive side of the ball and maybe a little bit of more offensive line help. But as far as playmakers go, those playmakers are just waiting for somebody to get them to the ball, and it's not Drew Lock. So this is like probably my number one team to where I just hope that they end up with one of these top four quarterbacks because they could be a lot more fun of a team if that ends up being the case. So, yeah, I mean, with us not doing trades, there's a group of teams here that don't really need quarterback or aren't projected to get quarterback to where Trey Lance is able to fall this far, but I don't see him making it outside of the top five personally. Once draft day actually gets here, and I think Denver is a prime candidate to trade up to make that happen. But as we lay Trey Lance number 9, a lot of fun.
Yep. So rounding out our top 10 here with the Dallas Cowboys, we both have them selecting the same position, just different players to get there. I have them selecting J.C. Horn out of South Carolina. He is, to me, my favorite cornerback in this draft.
Same.
Yeah, love J.C. Horn, but I can definitely see where you're going with Patrick Surtain because we all know Jerry Jones loves those Alabama players.
Yeah, this was strictly what I think that they're going to do, not what I think they should do. I think that Patrick Surtain is the first corner off the board on draft day, but J.C. Horn is my favorite corner as well. He was the first time we did this 1.0. I went a little bit more consensus. I hadn't got to watch a lot of these guys up at this point. I was trying to I did my homework briefly, prior to putting out mock draft 1.0, but didn't get to dig into it as much as I would have really liked to if I was going to put my name next to these guys. And
Right.
I've been able to do that a little bit more between 1.0 and 2.0. And JC Horn went from cornerback 3 to cornerback 1 for me. And so
Yes.
like if it's what I think they should do, we would have the exact same pick on this one too. But I do think that Patrick Surtain ends up being the first corner off the board. I mean, he's corner 2 for me. I do have him over the old boy from
Caleb
Virginia
Farley.
Tech. Yeah. So he is cornerback 2 for me, so I don't think it's a big loss from that standpoint. But yeah, no, I like your pick a lot, and if it was up to me, that's what I would have as well. But yeah, nevertheless, we have them, with a clear need there at corner addressing that position. So
Yeah.
I think that one's pretty easy.
Yeah, definitely. And so with number 11, this is where we also, differ some as well. I have them taking cornerback Patrick Surtain, the guy that you had going to pick before to Dallas. I have him dropping to number 11 to the Giants. I think any way they go on defense, I think is going to help. Um, this could be another team. I think they are committed to at least another year of Daniel Jones. But
Hmm.
if something did happen there where they wanted to move up and get one of these quarterbacks, if they're, I could definitely see it happening. Um, but right now, I think they just try to stockpile talent on the defense. And I think their DB situation could use some work. I think they get a very good prospect here. Well, I mean, I think he's a great prospect here in Patrick Surtain out of Alabama. You have them selecting defensive end Quiddy Pay, which is a little bit higher than where I've ever where I've seen him go in most any other draft. So, what makes you so high on Quiddy Pay at this slot here?
So it for me really it's more projecting versus going off what he did in college because he didn't really put it all together in college, but he has all the physical tools, and um, he was the number one edge for me 1.0, still is 2.0, but somebody that is actually rising for me a lot is the guy out of Georgia, Ojolari. It's been hard for me to fight off my love for him and not to just pencil him in as my number one edge rusher. But um, really, what it comes down for me, man, is um, Giants fans are probably going to scream that like, oh, our defense performed better than our offense last year. We need help on offense. And granted, they signed Kenny Galladay, so I don't think they're going to spend a high draft pick on a receiver, which is where I was kind of leaning before that signing. Um, but with them signing Kenny Galladay, no Kyle Pitts on the board, obviously at this point. I do think that the reality is their defense is better than their offense, but that's because Daniel Jones is the quarterback to me, and that's not going away this year. It seems like Daniel Jones is going to be the quarterback. So,
Yeah.
like, I mean, they've got Saquon Barkley coming back off injury. I still think that he is an incredible running back. They've got Kenny Galladay, they've got Sterling Shepard, who are two great receivers. Darius Slayton is serviceable. Evan Ingram. He kind of is what he is at this point. I had a lot higher hopes for him whenever he was coming into the draft versus what's happened up to this point. But I don't think their pass catchers are bad enough to where they should ignore the lack of edge rush that they have. They brought Leonard Williams back, who's great for the interior, and he is a great pass rushing option from the interior. But their edge options are piss poor, and so even though this is a little high for what a lot of people think for the first edge to come off the board, the Quiddy Pay is my number one edge rusher up to this point, and I think that this is one where maybe if the top five quarterbacks haven't come off the board, maybe they can trade back a few spots here with a team like if New England wants to trade from 15 to 11 to make sure that they get that last of the top five quarterbacks. I think that that would make sense on this one,
Yeah.
but for me, it just came down to with team need, and I don't have a problem with corner either. If my
Yeah.
top
I
two
mean,
corners
they've
weren't
got
off the board at this point,
here was my thinking with that is so obviously they've got Bradbury there, who's
right?
great, one of the best cornerbacks in the league, last
They don't
year.
have a lot going on opposite of
But
him, though.
outside of that, I believe
Yeah,
Darnay Holmes is their second, man up at that cornerback position.
yeah.
And I think there's just a clear upgrade with Patrick. So if you put Sertan with Bradbury,
Oh, I love the
I,
pick. Yeah, if
I think
Surtain
that,
was still on the board for me, he went off the pick before this. I love the pick, and I would have if he somehow made it to 11, I would have penciled him in there as well. So that's basically what made the pick for me is I would rather have the number one edge rusher versus my number three corner, and those were the
right.
two positions I was looking at. So that's why Quiddy Pay came off the board for me,
All right. So let's move on here to a team that did trade down, much to the chagrin of their fans.
which
Um,
I don't get. But
yeah, the
go ahead.
Eagles fans are, but I mean, so I can kind of see it to an extent as far as if the Carson Wentz thing does end up working out in Indy, they have a first round from Indy next year. Now they've got a first round from Miami, plus they have their first rounder from themselves. And if
They
they
could
get,
have three first
they
round
can have
picks
three
next year
first
if
round
Carson
picks
Wentz
next year in the
plays.
draft. So I can kind of see where they're
I thought it
going,
was great, man.
but I mean, yeah, if you don't believe in Hurts, because you would think, with Hurts, you would want to get him as much help as you can this year to see what you have in him. But I definitely like I can see why they're doing what they're doing.
I think that they still did it though. Like that's the thing for me is you want to see what you have in Hertz. So obviously you want to be able to acquire talent. This receiver class is deep. You need receivers, and this receiver class is deep. So you're able to trade back, and you're able to still get Jalen Hurts, a top end playmaker to add to this offense, even picking at 12. So if he does work out, now you've got three first round picks next year to continue to build around him. And if he doesn't work out, now you've got all the ammo you could
Ammo to
ask
move
for
up.
to trade up and replace Jalen Hurts. So
Yeah.
I thought that this was a huge win for Philly, and not to take away from Miami. I thought that the trade was a huge win for Miami.
Yeah.
Like the way that it broke down for Miami to go from 3 to 12 to 6 was basically like they got they were giving they were given a first round pick to go from 12 to 6, essentially is how it broke down.
Yeah.
Like, so huge W for Miami. They were running laps around the league, there for that day that they made those moves. Like, great job, Miami, on that moves. But I thought it was a great move for Philadelphia too. Like, you're
Yeah.
clearly committed to Jalen Hurts this year. So take yourself out of that quarterback range to where you're not, where you're not tempted. Stick to the plan. See what you have in Jalen Hurts. You are still more than capable of getting a great offensive piece at 12 to add to the Jalen Hurts project, and you get an additional first round pick next year. And if Carson Wentz ends up playing how pretty much everybody expects him to play, at least in terms of a snap percentage, maybe you disagree on how well he'll do it, but there's a really high chance that the Eagles are sitting with three first round picks next year and an upgrade and an offensive weapon this year as well. So I thought it was a win-win for Miami and for Philly, in terms of the moves that were made there. and we have them landing different players, but we both have them landing wide receivers from Alabama. You have them taking Jalen Waddle. I have them taking Devontae Smith. So we both have them taking our wide receiver 2, our offensive player number 3, essentially, if you put Kyle Pitts in the mix there. So I'll let you go ahead and what you think differentiates Jalen Waddle with Devontae Smith in terms of taking that guy there.
I think just for me, it basically just revolves around, I think the size and speed of Waddle might be a little more appealing. I know the Devontae Smith size thing gets really overblown for the type of player he is. But
Yeah,
I think if you're projecting NFL type, I think there's a lot of players that, or a lot of people that view Waddle as that second best wide receiver outside of Chase in the NFL circles. So that's just kind of where I went with there. I try to go along with just stuff that I'm hearing and reading as far as how the NFL is viewing these prospects. And there's just a lot of smoke to Waddle being that second guy off the board there. Very similar to last year, how we saw Ruggs go before, Judy and
which I
Jefferson.
think Waddle is a better prospect than Ruggs.
Yeah, I agree. So I mean, it's just very similar to how things played out last year. Nobody had Ruggs that high
Right.
except for the Raiders,
Well,
and
yeah.
I mean,
The,
the
you,
Raiders.
yeah, if the Raiders see a guy that runs fast, they're like, yeah,
Yeah,
gotta have that
and
guy.
look,
So
man, Philadelphia. I'm not saying it might be the right pick, but we've seen their wide receiver acumen on drafting wide receivers the last few
they
years.
like fast receivers too.
Yeah,
They
and
signed
so I
Deshaun
mean,
Jackson, drafted Jalen Rager. I mean, it makes
well, I mean,
sense.
not only that, but I mean, you hear all the time, they passed up Jefferson for Rager. They
Right.
got, obviously Arcega Whiteside over DK Metcalf. You
A
know,
lot of guys passed on DK, but valid point though. Valid
yeah,
point.
but I'm just saying, like, hearing from
Yeah.
Eagles fans and stuff, they're not known for making the pick on they're known for making the pick at wide receiver, but not necessarily.
They're
Yeah,
not a lot better than Bill Belichick at drafting receivers,
yeah,
basically.
yeah, basically. um, So that's just why I have them going there, and you just have them going Devontae Smith. So
Yeah,
I mean,
he's wide receiver 2 for me, Heisman winner. I mean the like you said, the size is kind of overblown to this point. Like the guy just gets open. Like I don't care what his size is. You can't match his footwork. You can't match his hands. He might not be wide receiver 2 in NFL circles, but up to this point, for me, he's wide receiver 2. I do think Waddle has more upside, but I think Devontae Smith, like I think the Eagles, and again, could just be a matter of um, what I think they should do overtaking what I think they'll actually do. But I think that they've taken enough shots on speed and upside and stuff like that at receiver to where they just need to get a safe option with great hands and great route running to give um, Jalen Hurts somebody to throw to that knows how to get open. So
yeah, um, I I can't really knock the pick. That's all I really have to say. I think it's a good selection for sure.
yeah, so
Uh,
we've got for number 13 was the Los Angeles Chargers. We've got the same pick going for this one. So I'll hand it over to you and let you break this one down.
all right, so Los Angeles Chargers, we both have Christian Darrisaw going. I think with Rashawn Slater going earlier, we both think they need offensive tackle help. They need offensive line help to help Justin Herbert out. Darrisaw is kind of locked in there, kind of clearly as that number 3 guy in NFL circles from everything we're hearing, everything we're reading. I think it's a fantastic draft for offensive tackle. I don't think you can go wrong with any of these guys. But yeah, Darrisaw just seems to be a fantastic product. It fantastic player. It's it's a perfect fit basically, and considering we both have him as our offensive tackle 3 on the board, it just it ends up playing out perfectly for the Chargers as well. Some people might have viewed this a reach as a few weeks or even months ago, but it's just a perfect fit for both the player and for the team.
Yeah, this is the last of the 3 tackles that I really am set on. It's like I struggle with offensive linemen, man. I'm not I lean on what a lot of other people say in terms of offensive linemen and things like that. I'm not a genius in terms of technique and things like that for offensive linemen. So um But from what the research I've done and things like that, this is kind of the three guys I think I'm most comfortable with: Sewell and Slater, and Darisaw is 1, 2, 3. And then outside of that, it gets a little dicey for me. But I like the fit here. I think with, like with the addition that they've already made in free agency of the offensive line, just continue to protect Herbert. There's good options around him. Um, might be a little tempting for their new defensive head coach to grab like a corner or something here, because I think with the pieces that they did lose in free agency, that it wouldn't hurt to add that. But yeah, I mean, continue to build around your franchise quarterback, and let let the weapons do their thing, and give Herbert the time he needs to make plays.
For sure. So number 14, we both have cornerback being addressed by the Minnesota Vikings. Obviously, they did get Patrick Peterson, but he's kind of on the tail end of his career.
Yeah, we'll
Hasn't
see.
really performed up to par the last 2 or 3 years. Um, so I have them selecting Caleb Farley out of Virginia Tech just because I have Starton and Horn going a little earlier. And you do have them selecting Horn here. I mean, I think Horn would be great if he was available here. Farley, up until the recent back surgery and all that, um,
Right.
he was cornerback one on a lot of boards,
Hmm.
and I just I think from everything they're projecting him to be ready for camp. He's not really going to miss too much time. I'm not that worried about it. Teams don't seem to be that worried about it. I think he does fall a little bit, but I don't think he falls out of the top 15 players. And for a guy like that, I mean, this is perfect for Minnesota, where they're getting one of, if not most people's cornerback one. He's not ours, but they're getting a lot of people's cornerback one here as the third cornerback to come off the board just because of the injury that happened and all that. But if reports are to be believed, he's not going to really suffer any downtime or anything like that. He's not going to miss any part of the season or anything like that. So I think it's a slam dunk.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a great pick. I had him taken, like you said, the same position. It's just a matter of J.C. Horn still being on the board. If it was up to me, he wouldn't be. But if he is still here, I think that this is a great pick as well. And I do think, I mean, if Darisaw didn't come off the board one pick before, I probably would have penciled him in pretty easily for Minnesota as well. I do think that they have a clear needed offensive line after Riley Reef left, and the hole that left. But I mean, at the same time, I get I get the idea of trying to fill needs through the draft, but at the same time, I think that that's better done through free agency than it is the draft, because there's such a small amount of draft picks that hit in their first year, to where if you're trying to fill a hole for that season, there's not a humongous percentage chance that you're going to hit on that. So it's kind of tough, but um, yeah, it was between offensive line and corner for me, and with the way it shook down for me with J.C. Horn still being on the board, that was kind of an easy one for me to pencil in.
So rounding out our top 15, we have a guy that we definitely don't think is going to be there at 15, but we do have the
I
same
should
player
be, but
though.
won't be.
Yeah, he'll more than likely go top five, and that is Mac Jones out of Alabama going to the New England Patriots. Patriots came out today, said they're set at the quarterback position. They are trusting Cam Newton.
Yeah, sound
Believe that. I mean,
like the Arizona Cardinals trusted Josh
Josh
Rosen, and
Rosen,
like the New York Jets trusted Sam Darnold,
the
and yeah,
49ers are trusting Jimmy G. We've
yeah,
heard that since the trade happened. Like, he's our
he's
quarterback.
still our quarterback. Yeah, yeah.
We'll see.
What fun.
Yeah, and there's been talk now, of course, and most of it's 99% of it's media driven about the Patriots possibly moving for Jimmy G to get him back in New England. Uh,
Right.
so I mean, we'll see what
Make all of Bill Belichick's wildest dreams come true, since he
happens.
wanted, he apparently wanted to deal Tom Brady and keep Jimmy G at the time whenever they were having to choose between the two. So, I mean, hey, with Bill's track record of, free agent and draft decisions, I'm sure that that'll work out just fine.
Hey, man, he got 6 titles, so I mean, those. So he had to draft Tom Brady.
Yeah, yeah. Even though that was like some friend of his apparently that told him to draft Tom Brady, I get shit on Bill Belichick any chance I get, but he's the one
I gotta
left with
deny it. I'm,
6
I'm glad to
rings.
see the Patriots making moves. Um,
Um,
So we'll see. Like I said, we don't project him to be there at 15. New England's another team that could definitely move up.
Yeah, I mean, like we trading up with the Giants at 11,
Possibly
possibly
even getting
possibly
up there.
Carolina at 8. Now that Carolina has a quarterback that they believe in, maybe they try to trade back. I mean, Detroit has talked about like Atlanta. There was a report that came out either yesterday or today that Atlanta and Detroit both were open to trading back. So
Right.
you could see 5 quarterbacks going in the top 7 picks, top
Top
8
five,
picks.
really. I mean, you could see 5 quarterbacks going in the top five. I mean, it's not
Yeah, who
terrible.
knows? Yeah, I mean there's no telling. So with no trades, Mac Jones pretty easily falls to New England at 15. But
Yeah.
um, neither one of us thinks that's the way it's going to shake out. But with no trades, that's the way it does shake out.
Right.
And the Bill Belichick Nick Saban connection lives on.
Yep. So we have Arizona, number 16. We both have them taking an offensive lineman, just a different position. I have them taking Elijah Vera Tucker, who projects more as a guard here at the NFL level. Very, very, you know, good prospect at that guard position,
Yeah,
and just help solidify that interior. I know they got Rodney Hudson. Um, they did some help along the offensive line this offseason, but I think they continue to solidify that spot. Um, and I definitely can't knock you for the offensive tackle position because, like I said, I think they need help all over that offensive line. You have them going
yeah.
Tevin Jenkins out of Oklahoma State.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't think he'll be a left tackle, but he'll probably play right tackle for him. He only gave up 4 pressures on 211 pass blocking snaps, and I think Arizona is going to be a team that passes the ball a lot. So that's kind of what ended up being um, the tiebreaker for me, to where I like the player that you pick, but I think that Arizona, with the weapons that they have and the quarterback that they have, I think that they're going to be a team that throws the ball quite a bit, and I think Tevin Jenkins can help them out a lot in their pass protection. So that's kind of where I ended up landing on that one.
Gotcha. And as luck would have it, I have Tevin Jenkins going the very next pick, number 17, the Las Vegas Raiders, who, for whatever reason, they decimated their offensive line this year in the offseason. But they still need to protect Derek Carr because that seems to be the only time he is a competent quarterback is whenever he is protected.
Right.
Because we've seen what happens whenever he's pressured. He like most quarterbacks too. You can't really fault him for that. 90% of quarterbacks are going to falter whenever they got guys in their lap, but him definitely more so than others. So I have them selecting Tevin Jenkins at number 17, and you actually have them going defense here.
Yeah, yeah. So Trayvon Mulrig is a guy that I've been kind of rising on. I had him going, I believe I had him going to 25 to Jacksonville the first time we did this. And the more I watch of him, man, I think the safety is a clear hole on this team. I mean, they let LaMarcus Joyner go, who they should have been playing at safety in the first place. They played him at nickel corner for whatever reason. Most of the time he was there, and he's better suited as a safety. So I mean, Raiders gonna Raider, but they have a hole there, and I think that while they might be able to get a safety later in the draft, I do think he's the clear best safety in this draft.
Yeah,
I like his size, and I like how great he is. Obviously in the passing game, breaking up passes and things like that. He's led all college safeties in pass breakups over the past 2 years. So I think that this would be an insert day one starter difference maker on the defense, where I mean, they do have a lot of holes. There's a couple different directions they could go here. And it sucks for them because even they've spent plenty of draft capital here lately and pass rushing, but they still need pass rush help even with the free agency signing that they make and all the draft capital that they've put in that position. They still need that as well, but yeah, I love the fit here. I think he could come in and be an impact player day one. So this is kind of one that I've been rising on a little bit here lately.
gotcha. Yeah, love the player. For sure, love the fit. I think Las Vegas is one of those teams that I think they can just go best player available, and just be happy with whoever that ends up falling to them.
As most teams should.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of number 18, Miami Dolphins going best player available, I actually have the first running back off the board this early. Surprised myself with it too. But I have them taking Travis Etienne, running back out of Clemson, going to Miami. Obviously, we saw what happened last year um, with the running game there. They never had a clear cut number one guy, but they got great production out of that running back position. And I think if you throw a guy like Etienne in that position with them, it's going to be a home run. So, I mean, anytime you can come out of the first round with Jamar Chase and Travis Etienne as your first two, as two picks in your first round pick, I think you've got to be an ecstatic,
You're
because we
set at
know,
those positions for
yeah,
the next 5 years minimum.
yeah, and we know what the defense did. So really, most of their help that they need is on that offensive side of the ball, and you get two
Mhm.
guys that can change the game with one touch to help out, Tua, and this could be this could turn into a very explosive offense very quickly.
Right. Yeah. I love it, man. I don't know if Travis Etienne will end up coming off the board that early. I would
It is
love it if
very
he
early
did.
for a running back.
I think that he's my running back one. I know Najee Harris is kind of the emerged as a running back one after the
Najee Harris is
improvements that you
actually
saw
my
him make.
running back one, but I think for what Miami wants to do, I think Etienne fits a little bit better there.
So I mean, I love the pick. I love the player. I'm a huge fan of Travis Etienne. But for me personally, I ended up going receiver just because with their sixth overall pick, I had Sewell fall into them and addressing the offensive line. So to get, you sign Will Fuller in the offseason as a free agent on a 1-year deal. And then you get like basically you can see how Will Fuller projects in that offense and like, well, okay, insert Jalen Waddle, who can do the same things just as well as Will
Yeah, they've
Fuller
got
does.
Devontae Parker there as well.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not huge on Preston Williams, but I like Devontae Parker's talent. I love Will Fuller. I love Jalen Waddle. So like for me personally, if they were able to grab another rock at the offensive line early, if Sewell did fall to them at 6, and then we're able, I don't know what the chances are Jalen Waddle makes it to pick 18, but if he does, like I would love these first two picks for the Dolphins if this is
Yeah.
ended up how it's shaken out, and they added a first round pick next year. Like, bravo, that this is a huge win for me. And I mean, they're clearly committed to Tua, so I think this gives them a great chance to see what they got and to see if they made the right decision or see if they need to move on. Because I mean, I think the trend in the NFL is really starting to lean more than ever toward the "what have you done for me lately?" And I mean, Miami seems like a team that is moving in the more aggressive direction to where they're ready to see what they can do. They know that they've got talent on that roster. They've got draft capital to where they can make
I believe
aggressive
they have
moves.
21 picks over the next two drafts.
Right. Whatever direction they think they need to go, they can make an aggressive move to make it happen, whether that's a quarterback or whether that's more playmakers in the future because Tua emerges as the guy, whatever the case may be. Miami is building it the right way to me to where they're a team that's just like killing the offseason right now.
Yeah, fantastic
So
moves.
yeah, this would be like just kind of a bow on the top of their incredible offseason for me.
Yeah. So number 19, another team who I think has had a really good offseason
Yeah,
is the Washington football team. I have them taking linebacker Zaven Collins out of Tulsa. You also have them taking a linebacker, Jeremiah Owusu Koromoa out of Notre Dame. Two different types of players,
they are.
but
Yep.
but very, very defensive forward drafting here. I really do think they need some offensive tackle draft or offensive tackle help as well. But this is a deep tackle draft, and I think they can, possibly get that guy in the second round where they just kind of take the most talented defensive guy. We both know Ron Rivera. He loves his linebackers,
Right.
and he loves attacking that quarterback, on the defensive side of the ball. And it's a very talented defense as well. And I think if you had a guy like Collins, who can get after that cornerback and can drop back, he reminds me very much of kind of a Kyle Van Noy type of a player, where he can rush the passer, he can drop back in coverage, he can kind of be a jack of all trades almost, kind of for that linebacking core there.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like you said, same position, different type of player for me. Um, this is a guy, man, that I've been just every time I watch him, I fall more and more in love with the talent with Jeremiah Owasua Koromoa. I mean, he's got short area quickness for a linebacker.
Very
Um, he if you look at his weight on paper, it looks low, but he doesn't play like that. I mean, he's got an aggressiveness to him.
And look at Darius
Um,
Leonard. He plays at like 270
yeah, like
pounds as a
they're
linebacker.
they're coming into like the same weight. Yeah, and they remind me a lot of each other. And honestly, man, with looking at Washington on the defensive side of the ball, it's tough to really pick a hole or a weakness. And I mean, they're not drafting quarterback at this point. They've got decent weapon. They've got good weapons at receiver. Antonio Gibson looks promising at running back. So going to the defensive side of the ball, I mean, they're not gonna. I don't see corner being an option here with them spending big money at corner in free agency. So linebacker is kind of where I ended up landing, and I mean, Koromoa was easily the best option available for me. To the point I said earlier that I was kind of struggling between him and Micah Parsons in terms of who my favorite running back was. So I think at 19, this is incredible value, and it's just built onto an already scary Washington defense. So I no issues here.
Yeah. So going into now the 20s, I have the Chicago Bears taking offensive tackle Samuel Cosmi out of Texas. You have them taking wide receiver Rashad Bateman out of Minnesota. Um, I basically just look at I mean, the Bears are what they are. For whatever reason, they're committed to Andy Dalton. You might as well get him some offensive line help because that offensive line is abysmal. I do think
It's
they
not great.
pretty
Yeah.
much just go any offensive skill position, or they can go anywhere on the offensive side of the ball because that's where they need the help at. And you could even possibly put cornerback here now since they ended up moving on from Fuller. Um,
Very true.
and
Yeah.
I mean, it for me, Samuel Cosmi. I love the player. Obviously, you talk about his pro day, the athleticism, the RAS score, the RAS score, which is relative athletic score. Um, he projects over the last 20 years, I think, as the number one athletic offensive tackle that has come out. He scored a 9.99 out of 10 on the athletic score. Just this, and it shows that I was telling Drew earlier, we talked about this actually before we hit record, but it shows up on tape too. I do think his technique, I know he uses he's very handsy as far as like he uses two hands to punch. And I know a lot of NFL teams want you to use one hand because you have guys swipe, pass rushers swipe. If you're using two hands to punch, they swipe those hands, you're losing both hands. They hit one hand, you're only losing one, you've got the other one you can punch with. So I know he's got some technical issues he can clean up, but the athleticism and the talent is undeniable there. And I don't think you can go wrong with any offensive help.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I lean to the offensive side of the ball as well, but just different position. And for me, man, Rashad Bateman, I think that he is a great value at this point. I'm probably higher than Rashad Bateman on both to the point to where I'm still trying to decide who my wide receiver two is between Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle. And then whoever ends up losing that battle, there's a good chance they're going to lose the wide receiver three battle with Rashad Bateman too, and end up being wide receiver four, whichever Alabama wide receiver I end up um, being less high on between the two, because I just I love this guy as a complete pass catcher, man. He's got the size, he's got the route running, he's got the footwork to beat you off the line of scrimmage. His yards per route run in college were tremendous, and this has kind of been just one of those guys that I connect to. That's one of my guys where, like, outside of Jamar Chase, like Jamar Chase is the clear wide receiver one for me and my favorite receiver to watch in this class. And then outside of that, I think Rashad Bateman might be my second favorite wide receiver. Not that I think he ends up being the second best, but just from pure enjoyment standpoint. And so with them, Chicago, I mean, obviously having Allen Robinson is helpful. Franchise tag, we'll see what happens there. And I love Darnell Mooney. But outside of that, I mean, like you said, they're I thought that they were trolling people with the quarterback one post that they made about Andy Dalton, but apparently that's a legit thing. Like, they're committed to Andy Dalton. So if you are, to your point, they should either try to protect Andy Dalton or give him more weapons to throw to, which is the direction both of us went. So Yeah, I like the pick that you made, but I love Rashad Bateman, and I refuse to let him slide outside of the top 20.
Yeah, and it surprised me like the way everything kind of fell, because I'm kind of viewing it as more like what teams are going to do.
Right.
And I can't believe I didn't have Rashad Bateman going in the first round at all. Like
You didn't have him or Devontae Smith, either one going in the first round. I was like, I was shocked whenever I was putting this together. Um, but
see, I thought I
hey,
had Devontae Smith. That might have just been an oversight by me. I thought I had Devontae Smith going, but apparently I didn't. Um, so yeah, that was definitely an oversight by me. I've been doing yard work all day. I've been out in the sun all day. My head's a
so
little
okay,
fried.
so Devontae Smith would have been a first round pick. Like,
Yes, yes.
okay,
I
okay,
probably would have had Devontae Smith going. Well, I guess where, let me see.
got
Where,
Jalen Waddle going to Philly at 12,
yeah,
and
and
then
then I
your
don't
next
have another
wide
one.
receiver wasn't until the Jets at 23 with Rondell Moore.
Yeah, so I'd probably put him up earlier, honestly. I could see him going to Las Vegas. I could see him going to Chicago, uh, the Giants. I could see him. I mean, there's a lot of places you can put him,
I agree.
for sure. So yeah, that was definitely an oversight by me. but um, but yeah, just the way everything fell. So let's move on here to number 21. Have my boys,
Your
Indianapolis.
Indianapolis Colts,
That's
yeah.
right. I do have them. We have them going same position. We just have different options here. I actually, I don't like your pick. I don't.
You don't?
I don't. I'm not.
Oh, so we're okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
I have them selecting Quiddy Pay out of Michigan, a guy that you actually had going very early at number 11 to the Giants. I have him falling all the way to 21, going to Indianapolis. Um, Obviously, we can talk about the offensive tackle help. They need the left tackle. Costanzo retired. And this is definitely an option. If we were doing trades, I would have them moving out of this spot, trading down. Um, but outside of offensive tackle, I think really the only weakness on the roster right now, maybe you could look at cornerback, but I think with Xavier Rhodes and some of the growth that they have,
Please tell
um,
me you think it's
um,
pass rush.
yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's pass rush.
That makes me love my pick even more. Go ahead.
Yes. Yeah,
Continue though.
yeah. So outside of offensive tackle, I think the biggest need on the team is pass rush. They need a dynamic guy, pair next to DeForest Buckner, go get after the quarterback. Justin Houston. From what I've heard, they're still kind of staying in touch with him to see maybe he'll possibly resign. But
Right.
he's 32, 33 years old, not getting younger. Um, Still productive, but they could obviously use an upgrade at that position. And outside right now, if you look at the guys that they have right now, they basically have Ben Bandigu and my boy Kamoko Toure as their edge rushers right now. And they did sign a couple guys there in free agency, but I think it was more of a depth kind of a piece, rotational pieces, since they did lose Danico Autry. Um,
Right.
but yeah, I think defensive end is the way to go. And I think Quiddy Pay, like you said, great twitch, great bend, definitely has some awesome pass rushing tools to work with. And outside of just a refined technique, he's right there very well against the run as well. Great guy. Ojolari is a guy that's actually falling on my draft board. I have
Oh, that's awesome
Yeah,
though, because
yeah,
he's rising for me. So
yeah,
that's cool.
yeah. Ojolari, I think he was the one player probably out of this whole draft. Well, probably not the whole draft because I think I would probably put um the tight end. Oh gosh, what's his name? Um, Brevin Jordan, the tight end, Brevin
From
Jordan.
Miami.
But Ojolari was, to me, him and Brevin Jordan were the two guys that could have helped their stock the most with a pro day performance. And I think Ojolari's pro day, he just bombed it to me.
So
Yeah,
that
the
that
numbers.
makes sense for me why I didn't really change much because I almost completely ignore pro days, to be honest with you. Like I watch them because I
Yeah,
love
I
football
mean,
and
I
anything I
do.
can look for.
I ignore them more with cornerbacks or with quarterbacks than I do more than. I mean, I like seeing certain players as like when it comes to pass rushers and offensive tackles and stuff like that. I like seeing the explosion. Um, kind of play, because it actually does, like the three cone, the broad jump, it actually does correlate very well with production in the NFL at those
Yeah, I don't disagree. Yeah.
whereas, quarterbacks, it just, they're just thrown against the air. It's a waste of time, honestly.
Right.
Uh,
So I mean, Quiddy
but
Pay, the guy you had picking, the guy that you picked, I had him going off the board several. I had him. I don't expect New York to pick at 11. I think that they're a prime candidate to drop down. But so Quiddy Pay, and if things worked out the way I think they would, I think that he would be going more toward the later teens. But regardless, I would have him off the board by the time 21 rolled around. And the guy that I have been rising on the most is just a pure pass rusher, which is what I think you guys need. I think just from a pure pass rushing standpoint, I think that Azeez Ojulari is the best pass rusher in this draft. I
see,
think
and I,
Quiddy
and I,
Pay.
I disagree with that completely. He's not even in my top three pass rushers in this class.
Ooh,
Um,
okay. I
I
think
think
Quiddy
that
Pay could be a more complete player, but just from a pure like speed pass
Kwity
rushing
Paye,
standpoint.
surprisingly, is not even my number one pass rusher in this class.
So who is?
A guy that I will get to here in just a few minutes.
Okay,
Um,
all right, fair enough. I'm assuming that that it's going to be Jalen Phillips,
you are
but we'll
assuming
see.
correctly.
Okay, so he was in the conversation for me as well. But man, whenever I flipped on Azeez Ojulari film, it was he just and he was, I said this last time we did this, he was one of the few guys the first go around to where I had actually seen a decent amount prior to trying to turn on some tape and looking, getting on YouTube and things, like, just because he played in Georgia and I saw a decent amount of Georgia football games last year, and he just always just jumped off the screen, man. It's like that guy is just not getting blocked. Um and from just a pure pass rushing standpoint, I think he has the upside to be the best pass rusher from this draft. Now, whether he ends up being the best complete DN, we'll see. But yeah, he's one that I think I had him as the third or fourth highest behind Kwity Paye, and Jason Owa was in there, and Gregory Rousseau and Jalen Phillips. He was kind of in that mix to where he's kind of separated himself from me, to where just guys that whenever I watch him on the field, his game speed is just on another level.
right. So here's the thing that worries me with Azeez Ojulari is, so when you look at the play weight, he's a very light guy. He wins mostly with speed, like you said.
Yeah,
And
yeah, he's a
he
he's
does
a
he
speed
does
rusher for
he does
sure.
have some very good bend to him. I will give him that. But like I said, you look at his three cone numbers, and these are all numbers that generally translate from almost exclusively with pass rushing success in the NFL. Like I said, I'm not a huge pro day guy, not a huge combine. Guys are in shorts, but there are certain positions that do translate with some of these numbers. Offensive tackle being one, pass rusher being the other. His three cone was very worrisome. His explosive numbers, as far as the broad jumps, they weren't really that great. He's one of the lightest edges in this class as well, and he struggled a bit with some of the more athletic tackles when you put it on film. And if you're winning with and if you are going to be a pure pass rusher, as far as you're not going to play well against the run, you're maybe possibly only playing third downs, coming in on pass rush packages. If you're not testing well with explosion, you're not testing well with maneuverability, and you are very light, that just has me worried. I mean, I still think he could be a very good player. I'm just not as high on him as some of these other pass rushers that are coming out.
Sure. No, I mean it's. I think there's a lot of upside.
If he tested
Um,
well, this would be a completely different conversation.
yeah,
But
and
the
I
fact that he
honestly,
didn't,
I literally didn't even like. I didn't spend a single second looking at Georgia's pro day numbers, to
yeah,
be honest with you.
he's one
So
of the guys that probably lost the most with his pro day.
yeah, and I don't. I mean, that's kind of par for the course for me. I don't really even look at pro day like, and I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying. I do think that there is some value to um, different things for different players, that pro days, to where like 40 time and things like that don't mean as much, where that for different positions there could be some value there. But I try not to let it affect my thinking too much to where I just kind of zone it out for the most part and just stick to game film and just watching him on the field. He just continually was blowing past people and making explosive plays. And his weight, I mean, he's your your number one pass rusher. He's a good like 20 pounds lighter than him. So I mean the weight concerns are fair, but I like Ojolari a lot from his explosiveness, and he's extremely, he's still young. So as are, most of the guys, because
Yeah.
we're talking about the NFL draft. But um, yeah, I that's one guy. It's kind of cool. It's kind of cool because this is a big thing where you've been following on him. I'm rising on him, so it's nice to get some differences as we get deeper into the
Right.
draft.
And so now pick number 22, Tennessee Titans. We both have them selecting the secondary piece at cornerback. I have them selecting Gregory Newsome the second out of Northwestern. You actually have them selecting Caleb Farley, which would be a worse
Incredible
nightmare
value
for
if he
me.
did land it there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have them going much higher up, kind of similar to our last pick that we did with the Colts. Um, I, Obviously, I think they need secondary help still. I think they could use wide receiver help as well. This would be a perfect spot, like I said, for Devontae Smith if he did end up falling as well. That would be a great fit for them as
Oh
well there.
yeah, God, that would
Um,
be a great landing spot.
yeah, so I mean, it would. Um, they tried their best to replace their secondary from last year, but the problem with that is they did it with middling players who, I mean, if you're going to replace a below average secondary, why are you replacing them with below average free agents? It just doesn't
Right.
make sense to me. But I love Gregory Newsome here. I think that could be an absolute home run pick for them if he does end up working out. Um, and I believe you're on the same train with the secondary thoughts.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for me, going into free agency, the two positions were the secondary and pass rush, and they did everything they could. They threw a lot of money at the pass rush, obviously in free agency. So I don't have them addressing that here, and so that leaves cornerback. And with Caleb Farley and the surgery concerns and things like that, I don't know how much of a factor that'll play into his draft stock. But if he does fall to 22 to Tennessee, I think this would be a home run pick and would be, a great pick for the Titans. So this purely came down to this guy is still on the board. He shouldn't be on the board. Here is a clear fit and, just
Yeah.
pencil him in.
I think
So
if Caleb Farley falls that far, I don't think he's making it past 21, honestly, because I think Chris Ballard's jumping all over that if he's at
yeah, yeah,
20.
he's a great, yeah, I mean, he's not he's a top 20 player in the draft
I
when
think
healthy.
I
So
think when healthy, he's a top 10 player.
there's definitely arguments to be made for that. So yeah, I mean, he's got no business falling this far, but in this case he did. So it was pretty easy for me to pencil him in, and he wouldn't have fallen far. He wouldn't have fallen much farther if I didn't give him to Tennessee, because I've got the next team selecting the same position with the New York Jets taking Greg Newsome the second, the same corner you just gave to Tennessee. I've got them going to the Jets. So um, I mean, they're good. They get their quarterback of the future with Zach Wilson earlier in the draft. Lord knows this more than almost any team in the league. This team has plenty of holes to fill. The secondary being one of them, and so I like your pick you made with the wide receiver Rondell Moore. They definitely need pass catchers for their shiny new quarterback as well, but they need defensive help too. And so the guy you just had go off to Tennessee, I had going to the New York Jets as well.
Yeah, definitely can't fault the defensive pick. They are, like you said, they're a team that can just take, you know, talented players and just be happy. For
Yeah.
me, the way you feel about Rashad Bateman is the way I feel about Rondell Moore. I think if Rondell Moore didn't have the size concerns, that he has, and he didn't, obviously, he took the year off last year as well. But I think we'd be talking about him and Jamar Chase as wide receiver one and wide receiver two, because I think just the talent level of Rondell Moore is just through the roof. And he would be a guy that, they signed Corey Davis in free agency. They still have, slot receiver Crowder, there to take pressure off, underneath. And they really need that guy. Corey Davis is more known for attacking the middle of the field. Crowder is more known for attacking the short area. They just need that guy that can take the top off a defense. And outside of maybe this would be a perfect Devontae Smith landing spot, like I said, if I didn't have a brain fart earlier. But Rondale Moore is just that next guy to me. That there might not be a better type of guy that can take the top off of a defense than Rondale Moore in this draft. I think
Yeah.
we'd be looking back here in about 3 to 4 years, looking back on this draft and saying like, wow, that guy probably should have went top 10. He's the ultimate just chess piece that you can use, very similar to a Tyreek Hill type of a chess piece.
Right. Yeah. I know. I love the player, and I love the fit too. I wouldn't have any complaints if this ended up being the fit. I think I consciously kind of let Rondell Moore fall because I think that there is a perfect fit for him here a little bit later in the draft, to where if all the stars align, it could be so much fun for NFL, for fantasy, for just all of football combined if he lands
Jesus
where I have him
Christ.
landing. But I love where you have him, and I agree with everything you said about him, to where from just, if you delete from your mind how tall he is and just focus on everything else, he's just as
And yeah,
talented as every other
and
pass
here's the
catcher
thing
in the league
too,
or in
is
the draft.
and I mean we're not you can look at the height, but I mean, just listen to some of the stuff this guy did here. It's it's just unbelievable. So he did have really good arm length as well. So let's look at Rondell Moore. He absolutely annihilated his pro day. I mean, it's absolutely hit 24 reps at 108. He's 180 pounds, which is the big thing, his height and his weight. He
Right.
had 24 reps of 225, ran a 4.29 40-yard dash, 42.5-inch vertical. I mean, the guy he gets up. Like he just he is a freak of nature athletically.
Yeah, he never really
And
played outside at Purdue, but like
yeah,
that
and
that vertical gives you a like
he can
some
just
hope.
go up and snag it.
Yeah,
And he's gonna
he's a
blow by.
freak.
Yeah, the guy's a freak athlete. And it's not like that's all he is either. I mean, you know, it's similar to like how Tyreek Hill was coming out, and Tyreek Hill, you heard about the speed and the vertical and all that, but you heard like, he's much more of a track player. He's not a complete wide receiver. What's the opposite with Rondell Moore? The guy's a complete wide receiver, tracks the ball better than almost anybody except for Chase in this draft. Um, Fantastic hands, doesn't drop the ball. He's just a guy that, you know, you he creates his own space. You don't even have to get him into space. You just have him run a route. He creates his own space. Great route runner, great hands, great technician. And then you throw all of that with the type of athlete he is. If this guy was 2 inches taller, he's a top 10 pick.
Yeah, it's like a Steve Smith clone almost, but like even more athletic possibly.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, that's
man,
I
yeah,
love him.
no, I
Love him.
love the player. I'm on board 100%. Yeah, count me in. But um, so I can't complain at all about the pick. So 24 with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I've got them addressing the offensive line, and you have them addressing the running back position.
Look at
So
me.
running
The
back is
ultimate
the
never pay running back, get a late running back, and I've got two running backs going in the first round.
running
I'm
back is
throwing
going
it
to be
back to
the
1990, baby. We're
yeah.
going back 20 years or when 30 years. Fuck. We're throwing it back 30 years.
Running back's the hot take. So I'm gonna let you lead it off here with
Yeah.
Najee
So for
Harris from
me, Najee
Alabama.
Harris, even over, obviously, at pick 18 with the Dolphins, I had them going to Etienne just because of the fit. But Najee Harris is my number one running back in this draft class. And I think his pro day did nothing. Like I said, you can look at pro days depending on what position and situation it is, but he's done nothing to lose that spot. Pittsburgh is a team, and even the owner came out this offseason. The owner even said, you know, I never want to see us be that far back in rushing category again.
Yeah,
I think all signs point to them selecting a running back here. And if Najee Harris is on the board, I think this is a home run pick for the Steelers because he's a guy, granted, they might need some offensive line help and stuff like that, which you do have them selecting an offensive tackle here, but he's a guy that he's going to create his own I mean, it's very similar to Derrick Henry. He doesn't need one of the greatest offensive lines to run behind because he creates his own yards. He's going to run over people. He's going to run through people. He's a guy that always goes forward. You never see Najee Harris go backwards. Um, even whenever he's running into a crowd of people, it's almost like watching Jonathan Taylor last year with the Colts. Which, I mean, granted, the Colts offensive line is what it is, but you hardly ever saw Jonathan Taylor go backwards. Even when he was getting hit at the line of scrimmage, he's gaining 2 to 3 yards. And I think that just fits Pittsburgh perfectly for the type of city it is, the type of rushing that they've always had, those bigger dudes who will just, pound you and pound you and pound you. And he also has the speed to where, you know, after you've been getting beat up, for 3 quarters in the fourth quarter, he can take that ball 1 or 2 runs and boom, he's gone 70 yards. Um, Very underrated pass catcher as well out of the backfield. I think it's just a clear upgrade for that offense and a clear um, home run pick for both the player and for the team.
Yeah, I think they've got a clear need at the running back position without a doubt. So I don't hate the pick. Najee Harris is my 1B to Travis Etienne's 1A. And depending on where the guys end up landing, that could end up flip flopping easily. Um, I struggle with Javonte Williams to where I do think there's a clear tier with Travis Etienne, Najee Harris, Javonte Williams, but I almost want to create their own tier with Najee Harris and Travis Etienne, and let Javonte Williams have his own tier at 3. But landing spot can change a lot of these things. But yeah, so I mean, with you having um, Travis Etienne already off the board, I mean, Najee Harris does just kind of feel like a Pittsburgh Steelers running back. I mean, the
I mean,
grinded out.
even the name, like hair, like the name Harris with black and gold on the back of it. Shout out to my brother-in-law Matt. I'm sure my sister, because that's my sister's maiden name is Harris. So I'm sure my sister would have a nice Harris jersey in black and gold, waiting for her.
Right. So I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I can definitely see the fit. For me, I ended up going with the offensive line. Dylan Raduns. I don't want
Red
to.
Oons.
Yeah, I don't butcher his name, but North Dakota State, obviously associated with Trey Lance. At their pro day, Trey Lance kind of had all the attention, but that was another guy to look out for. And what moved the needle for me with him was because in terms of his college tape, there wasn't a lot of competition, but at the Senior Bowl, he really held his own against those guys and opened my eyes at least to where he moved like that. That's what moved it up for me. And with the holes that Pittsburgh has in the offensive line and the statue that is Big Ben is expected to be back next year. And I mean, if you're going to bring Big Ben back, I can only assume that you're going to be all in while he's there. So try to give him some protection. I think in the same sense you're talking about trying to give him some support from the running game because they didn't have that last year either. And you can't just depend on Big Ben to do it all at this point. So I like that as well. But whenever it came to Pittsburgh, I just gave them what I thought was the next best offensive lineman.
Yeah, definitely can't go wrong. So pick number 25, getting into our last little few picks here. Um, I have them taking your boy Trevon Moehrig out of TCU, the safety position. I think it's a perfect fit for the player, perfect fit for the team. It's really what they need on that defense. And I love the player, love the fit, and it would just be a home run selection for them.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that pick there. Like you said, I've got him going to pick 17 to Las Vegas. He has kind of become one of the my guys, I guess, for this draft, to where like I the first mock draft we did, this is where I had him going as well. I had him going 25 to Jacksonville. There's a clear need there. He would fit a hole. I mean, if he is still on the board at 25, that's a home run there. And for me, kind of, it was another guy that I didn't think needed to be on the board, but there wasn't as much of a premium on his position like Christian Barmore from Alabama in the defensive interior, defensive tackle position. I do think this is a place where Jacksonville has a need. And just as far as pure talent goes, yeah, I think this could be a top 20 guy in terms of just pure talent. Now that the positional um, need isn't, or not need, the positional disparity, in terms of the amount of defensive tackles and things like that. I don't know if he's projected to go this high, but if he did make it to 25 at Jacksonville, I think he would feel a need. He would be a day one starter, be a day one impact player, to where, that this is a team that has a lot of picks and a lot of draft capital over the next few years. You took, the what most people assume is like the best quarterback prospect over the last decade at the number one overall pick. So I think you just need to start filling holes. They've got decent playmakers already. So rebuild that defense to back up to what it used to be. And I think that Christian Barmore could be a great piece to kind of work their way up to that.
Yeah. So pick number 26, we have the Cleveland Browns on the board here. And I actually have them selecting my number one pass rusher in the class, and a guy who I think is slowly rising up some draft boards. I think realistically, by the time our version 3 draft comes around, I can see this guy going a lot higher. I've actually seen him mocked all the way up at 11 to the New York Giants in a few mock drafts as well. So
Wow.
and that is Jalen Phillips out of Miami. Obviously, he took, retired from football, had some concussion concerns, and then ended up at Miami last year. And if we're just talking about athleticism, pass rushing skills, basically the entire package, he's my guy that I'm sticking my neck out for in this draft. He 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 was actually the number one overall. I don't know if it's overall or number one pass rushing. I want to say it was overall high school player
High
when
school
he,
player. Yeah.
yeah. And the guy's done nothing but produce everywhere he's been. And that last year in Miami, if you just turn on the tape, I mean, it's the guy's just got, he's one of those rare prospects that he already has 2 to 3 different types of moves that he can beat you with. Most of these guys that come out of college, they've just got that one special move that they're very one dimensional when it comes to their pass rushing technique. And once, that's just part of learning. And it's also why it takes pass rushers so long before they actually can produce outside of, your normal, Nick Bosa's and stuff like that. Jalen Phillips, and this is going to sound blasphemous, okay? This is going to sound blasphemous, me saying this. Jalen Phillips reminds me so much of Nick Bosa coming out of college. If you just purely look at the tape, don't look at the names on the back of the jersey, don't look at the colleges. If you put the tape side by side and watch them, the stuff that they do is extremely similar. And it's why I'm willing to stick my neck out for this guy. And I think if you're getting that type of production at that late of a draft pick, and it's also, I think some of the other guys are starting to catch on because, like I said, I'm seeing him go all the way up to number 11, almost a borderline top 10 pick in some of these mock drafts that are coming out the last 2 or 3 days. I'm not quite there yet. I don't think the NFL's quite there yet. Or, I mean, I'm there yet, but I just don't think the NFL is. And that's what we're projecting, in this mock draft. Love Jalen Phillips. I If the Colts ended up with him at 21, I would be extremely ecstatic. I think he's just going to blow up in the NFL. And to me, that's the one weakness on that Cleveland defense outside of maybe linebacker help, which they tried to address. Love the Anthony Walker pickup. But they really need that second pass rusher on the other side of Miles
Yeah.
Garrett.
Right.
And I think this is just, to me, this, if this did end up playing out this way, this would be I mean, and they've already had my favorite offseason of any other team in the NFL with the additions they made in free agency, the John Johnson pick and some of those other guys that they picked up. I think if this does end up happening, this will be my favorite draft pick of the entire draft.
Yeah, I mean, I struggled between the linebacker I ended up going with and Jason Owa, who was my next up defensive end in terms of who I had. Jalen Phillips, he does have he's got the intrigue, he's got the high school rep and things like that, but the injury history does
Yeah.
concern me a little
If
bit.
the medicals check out on this guy,
That plays a big part of it, and if the medicals play out and everything works out like that, he'll definitely skyrocket for me. But
well, I say that's why I had him at 26, is just because the medical,
right.
question marks.
Yeah, it makes sense.
The concussion history is very concerning. Um,
For me, for Cleveland, Cleveland might be, I don't know if this is hot take-ish or not. I think outside of the quarterback position, Cleveland might have the most complete roster in the league.
I don't think it is a
Is
hot.
that hot take-ish?
I don't think so.
Like I don't know what Baker's gonna be. I really don't. But they're
Well,
set. They're
I think with him you get something different every week, and I think that
right.
he's going to allow us to stay consistent.
That's why I want to use a disclaimer outside of the quarterback position. They're set at running back. They're set at receiver. They're set at tight
Offensive
end.
line,
They're set at offensive line. They've got decent DBs and
they've
now
got
they
talent
now
wise, they have one of the top five DB rooms talent wise now.
right yeah, and if you include safeties and things with John Johnson, signing, and then they brought Troy Hill in. They've got Denzel Ward. Hopefully Greedy Williams is back to 100%. Like yeah, and then Miles Garrett. Miles Garrett is definitely he's got the team on his back in terms of pass rush. Like he's lifting the pass rush up on his own.
Yeah,
Which is why I like your pick here for Cleveland. I do think they need somebody opposite of Miles Garrett. But outside of that, linebacker for me is the one, and this kind of makes me a little bit sad because the Rams, I had really been, I'm a Rams fan, and linebacker is a huge hole for us, and we're picking at pick 57, and I'm a Kentucky fan, Kentucky basketball, Kentucky football, and so Davis has been a target for me at 57. I thought it was a realistic target for a while until I've
yeah,
seen him just absolutely
yeah.
skyrocketing
His
up
his
draft
his pro
boards.
day just ruined that.
Yeah, and so
The guy ran what, a 4.38 at a
Kentucky,
at the
I
linebacker
don't
position.
look. I'm a Kentucky Wildcats fan through and through. I don't know who was working the stopwatch at Kentucky's pro day, but like everybody ran like a 4.4 plus, if not better, at Kentucky's pro day. So, if if people are going to buy into that, there's so many stocks just going up right now.
Yeah, there's been a
Um,
lot of comparison to Darius Leonard with this guy.
Yeah, it's similar to Koromo out of Notre Dame that we've already talked about. But I think that if you're not going to address pass rush outside of Miles Garrett, I think this is position to go, and I think that this is the next man up. I was hoping that he wouldn't get this kind of attention because, like I said, I wanted the Rams to get him in the second round, but it doesn't sound like that's going to happen. So if that's not going to happen, I love this Cleveland roster. I love John Johnson. I love Troy Hill. I love the players that they acquired. Um, it to where, hey, insert my favorite Kentucky player here into the defense where they have a little bit of a need. And I mean, if Baker hits, man, this team, I think like Tom Brady is the GOAT, but even if you take quarterback position out of the conversation for all the teams in the league, I truly think that Tampa and Cleveland might have the two most complete rosters in the league. So it kind of just comes down to Baker. And I don't know, man. I love their offseason, and I would love this pick if it shook out this way for them. I would hate it selfishly for me because I don't want him to go here, but I I love what Cleveland's doing.
Yeah, me too. Especially like I said, if they make the pick that I picked, this would be my favorite pick of the draft. Um, so number 27, we both have the same guy. Disclaimer, like I said, if I hadn't been working outside, a little bit too much sun. So it's probably where I would have slotted Rashad Bateman if my brain was working properly. But we both have them taking Terrence Marshall out of LSU. It's, you know, I think the Ravens clearly need wide receiver help. That's their number one weakness, maybe on that whole team right now.
Mhm.
And they tried to sign a few guys. I know,
Sammy Watkins.
yeah, they did actually sign Sammy Watkins, but I know they tried to sign Ty and a few other guys. My boy said, he doesn't want to play with a running back, so he's coming back to Indy. Um, I'm sorry, I love Lamar, but I mean they have had some issues trying to get wide receivers in there. Uh,
Mhm.
the
Well,
sign,
it's tough to get free agent receivers to want to come get a big payday there, or even get
get a
like a
team that
short
runs the
payday there.
ball.
Yeah, like you
Yeah,
know that the pass rushing pie is so small that it like why would Kenny Galladay want to come there whenever he knows that his third contract, his next contract is probably going to be shortened because he's not going to get a lot of targets and things like that. So like for Baltimore, it's pretty clear that if you want an impact receiver, you're going to have to draft one because the guy with as much as you run the ball, and I mean it's not with the way that the roster's built. It's a way to do it, but it's not going to be intriguing for free agent receivers. So if you want
Right.
to add pass catchers, you're going to have to do it through the draft. And for me, just it next man up for me would have been Rondell Moore over Terrace Marshall Jr. But I think Terrace Marshall Jr. fits better
It's
than
yeah.
Rondell Moore just because they do have Hollywood Brown there, who I think, even though I think I like Rondell Moore more than I like Hollywood,
Oh, I
honestly.
definitely do.
Um, I think that they have somewhat of the same skill sets, whereas Terrace Marshall Jr. has the ability to line up outside. And I struggled the mock draft 1.0. I was really struggling with my wide receiver. Was my wide receiver six? I guess I had Jamar Chase, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, Rashad Bateman, Rondell Moore. So yeah, my wide receiver six, I have been kind of struggling, and I've been going back and forth with Tony from Florida and a couple different guys. I have 100% settled on Terrace Marshall Jr. as my number six receiver in this class. I love the talent. I love what he did once he actually had the workload. I mean, he played behind so many great receivers. Whenever you look at Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, and he for a short amount of time before he opted out this past year, he was put in the limelight and he did nothing but succeed. I'm all in on Terrace Marshall Jr. as the sixth best receiver in this class
Yeah, I think
and as a great outside receiving option, which is what I think Baltimore needs. So while this is my fifth receiver coming off the board and he's my sixth best receiver, I just like to fit a little bit more with Rondell Moore versus Terrace Marshall. So that's we ended up landing on the same guy. That was kind of my thought there, to where I,
yeah.
I think that's a huge upgrade on the outside for Lamar.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, I agree. But like I said, this would be where I would have slotted Rashad Bateman if I thought about it. Number 28, I have them actually selecting a guy that you had a couple picks earlier, Jamin Davis from UK, the linebacker with the Saints. I think, he's skyrocketing up draft boards. Obviously, you touched on him a minute ago, and you actually have them selecting Asante Samuel Jr., cornerback out of Florida State. Um,
Yeah, I mean, with New Orleans, they're a really talented team. I mean, they're cap strapped, but they've got a lot of talent on the roster, and it's tough to find like a huge hole. Once you get to the back of the draft, it's like, man, you're really starting to like if you're trying to just strictly fill holes, I think you're doing it wrong at this point. Just my opinion. I think you should be looking at some of the best players available,
right.
and Asante Samuel Jr. fit that for me to where I don't completely love what they have opposite Marshawn Lattimore at corner. And they have other small pieces they could fill or whatever, but I think Asante Samuel Jr. represents both something, some upside, and a player that this is around the area. The back of the first round is kind of where I see him going. So I like the fit here and was kind of able to it. If Davis out of Kentucky wasn't already gone for me, I like the fit that you had too. It's just a matter of him already being off the board, really.
Right. So number 29, I actually have them taking Asante Samuel Jr., the Green Bay Packers, where you have them taking Rondell Moore, which would be sick.
I'm hot. I'm hot and bothered, baby.
Yeah, that would be sick. The thing that stopped me from wanting to take a wide receiver here is just just the fact that if you look at what they did last year and you look at Aaron, I mean, and I get, you want to get Aaron Rodgers help. And I do think in this draft, they do. I think with one of their top two picks, they do get Aaron Rodgers some
They
help.
better, or they're going to get
Um,
flamed again.
yeah. But if you look at what lost them those playoff games, obviously, you can say what you want about Kevin King, but it was that secondary was just,
Secondary.
yeah,
Yeah.
was just roasted. And you're at the point now to where it's like, well, is it cool, to get Rondell Moore and put up a bunch of points? Or
Absolutely, it
or do
is.
we want to finally get past that hump and get to the Super Bowl? And I think Asante Samuel Dune Jr., while he might not be as sexy as a pick as Rondell Moore, I think as far as winning games, I think Green Bay is going to target that secondary.
Yeah, and it's a clear need for them, I would think as well. And if Asante Samuel Jr. wasn't already off the board, I think that would probably be where I would have went to. But I continue to so mock draft 1.0, I let Kyle Pitts fall down to Arizona because I just wanted to see it happen. 2.0, I did the same thing with Rondell Moore here, to where like you saw what Green Bay did whenever they had Randall Cobb play that role.
Yeah, but
And
if you put Randall Cobb on steroids,
now you've got Rondell Moore. It's so insert Rondell Moore here. You've got Devontae Adams on the outside doing his thing, and Rondell Moore would eat people alive with the attention he wouldn't attract, because the attention that Aaron Rodgers attracts, and they brought Aaron Jones back and they've got Devontae Adams on the outside. There's so many pieces on this offense you have to worry about that Rondell Moore would be able to feast from day one. And this is by far the most fun that I think I would have from a fantasy standpoint, just
yeah,
from like an NFL
I,
fan standpoint, to where
dude, I'm
like
sitting
this
here
is my
thinking, and I'm like,
favorite landing spot.
I'm sitting here
Like,
thinking, like I said, I've got that number 3 pick. If Rondell Moore ends up in Green Bay, I
oh my
might pass
God.
Jamar Chase and Kyle Pitts. Like I might
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah. It would be tempting, man, because like
That would be sick.
yeah, this is one that I'm kind of like trying to speak into existence, basically,
I would not hate
because
it.
of how much fun it would be, man. I'm a huge Rondell Moore guy. Absolutely love the talent, love the player, and if you match him up with, they have the need there. They have the talent around Rondell Moore to make it, to make it to work.
Yeah,
And
Aaron
oh
Rodgers. I mean, that would be
God,
perfect.
yeah, that one was just kind of I had so much fun penciling that in.
Yeah. So number 30, we have Buffalo Bills. We both have the same guy here as well. And we both have Jason Owe, defensive end out of Penn State. Uh, I think we both just kind of agree. Buffalo is also a very complete roster as well.
Hmm.
I just think their pass rushing options are getting a little elderly, to say the best. Still productive there, but they could definitely use some young blood in that room. And to get a guy like Owe there and have him learn from those veterans in that locker room and at that position, I just think it would be a very smart pick, and it would pay dividends in the future. Excuse me, for them as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I agree completely. I wanted to put in my running back one, Travis Etienne here, which is what I did with mock draft 1.0. I wanted to do it again, but um, I think there's a decent chance with how much talent is in this draft. Even though, like, I think Etienne and Najee Harris are incredible running back prospects. I think there's a decent chance that we go through this entire draft without a running back being drafted in the first round. Even though I don't necessarily know if that's how it should shake out. I'm I'm with you on team never pay running back, but I'm also on team draft running back late in the first round if you don't have any glaring holes, or if your clear best player available isn't on the board, take a running back right there at the very end, because if you can have that fifth year control of a really talented running back to where you can get 5 years of just elite production from a running back, and then you can let somebody else overpay them, sign me up. I'm all for that. And Buffalo is a really prime example of that. So I would love to pencil in Travis Etienne or Najee Harris here. I think that's a great landing spot, because I don't believe in who they have at running back
Yeah,
there. I'm not a fan of Zach Moss or um, Devin Singletary.
Singletary.
I'm not a fan of either one of
Yeah,
those guys there. But um, saying what I think they could do, I do think their pass rush could use a little bit of an upgrade here, and I think that Jason Owa is a value at this point. Honestly, I think he could be a top 25 type of player, and so to get him in the very back of the first round, he's got. I was glaring about Ojolari. This guy's got great speed as well. So,
yeah,
and I think he might be more complete than Ojolari from a run defense perspective too. So I think he could be a more complete player, and I think this would be a home run pick at the back of the first round.
yep. So number 31, getting into our last 2 picks, our Super Bowl teams here, and really I can see both these teams kind of trading out, Tampa Bay especially, but Kansas City Chiefs at 31. We both have them selecting an offensive tackle here. Obviously, we saw what happened in the Super Bowl. We know they released both their bookend tackles. So that offensive tackle position is still a position of need for them because they didn't address that in free agency. They kind of secured more of the interior of the offensive line. I have them selecting Liam Eichenberg out of Notre Dame. You have them selecting offensive tackle Samuel Cosmi, who I had going number 20 to the Bears. I think both of these players would represent a tremendous value for the Kansas City Chiefs, and I like the fit on both. Eichenberg is definitely not the athlete that Cosmi is, but as far as a technician, he reminds me a lot of Anthony Costanzo coming out of Boston College. Very similar type of profile athletically and technically as well. He's just a guy that when you turn on the tape, he might not blow you away. He doesn't do anything A plus, but he does everything B plus. Is the best way to describe Eichenberg. Um, and he just doesn't lose. And at the end of the day, whenever you're evaluating offensive tackle prospects and offensive line prospects in general, that's what you want. Is you want a guy that you turn on the tape, he just doesn't lose. Like he wins every rep he goes. And he's one of my favorite players. I think he can possibly drop into the second round of the draft, where this is where, I would kind of get into the Colts trading down in the draft and maybe picking up that extra early second round pick from a team that's wanting to move up from, their early second round spot into the 20s to maybe get that other player. This Reichenberg is a guy that I can see. Raduns is a guy I can see. Some of these offensive tackles, Cosme even possibly could drop into the second round, that early second round. I can see some of these teams moving back and picking up these tackles that are going to be there, around the 40s and the 50s.
Yeah.
And they're still getting, this is a very very good year to need a tackle, because it is one of the most deep tackle spots drafts that has been around in probably a decade plus, where you have guys that are going day two, that are going to go round three, that are going to come in and be starters on your offensive line. and
Yeah.
and, it, and it's definitely something that the NFL needs. In general, the NFL needs pass protectors and these great tackles to keep these star quarterbacks up. And the offensive line play the last few years, outside of a few guys, we kind of saw it last year with some of the tackles that were taken in the first round, um, where they came in and made immediate impacts. The NFL has needed an influx of great tackle prospects and position players for a decade now.
Right.
And we're finally getting that help this, between last year and this year. You're finally going to start seeing some of these tackle prospects come in and make their mark in the NFL. And I think it's great for the game.
Yeah. No, I agree. This was a spot where, like, for me, the surprise thing was Elijah Vera Tucker just kept sliding for me into where I think he's a first round player, but I don't have him in the first round, and I wanted to put him here. But the reality is, Kansas City spent big money at the guard position. They've got the center locked in, to where they really just need help at tackle. And there was other guys like I could have penciled him in for Pittsburgh. Or a couple other positions to where, like, I think Elijah Vera Tucker is a first round talent, but I just didn't find a spot to put him in. And so I end up going with the guy that you had going in the top 20, who I like as well. But it's just kind of, it seems like
Well, I
tackle is
mean,
a
really,
glaring
when you're,
need for Kansas City at this point with what they did in free agency.
yeah, and I think with these tackles too, I think once you get past that top three, your Sewell, Slater, and Darisaw, it's
Mhm.
almost just like, what's your flavor? Because all these
Right.
tackles do different things. They're all different. Um, they're all effective though. That's the thing. It's like they do different things, but they're all effective at those things that they do.
Yeah.
Where, like I said, Samuel Cosme is a freak athlete at that position. He's a guy that I think he drops 30, 40 pounds. I think he plays tight end. That's what kind of freak athlete I think Samuel Cosme is. Um, and he just does things differently. Whereas Eichenberg, like I said, much more of a technician, not a very great athlete, but he's a guy that's just going to win reps. He's not going to lose you any reps. He's a guy that's going to be technically sound, not commit penalties. You're never going to see him out of position. And I think that just kind of played more into what Kansas City would do for me, because they want those guys similar to how, Tampa Bay did last year with their selection. They want a guy that comes in day one and can just lock down that spot. And I think he might project more as a right tackle. They could possibly move him in right tackle than left tackle. Um, but whichever tackle spot he does end up playing, you're getting an anchor at that position.
Yep. Yep.
And a
And
guy who reminds me a lot of too, outside of Costanzo. I'm sorry to keep going about Eichenberg, but a guy that he does remind me a lot of here as well is Mitchell Schwartz. Yeah. I mean, speaking of
very
Kansas
familiar
City,
name for Chiefs fans.
yeah, that's who he reminds me of as well at that position. So I think cutting them and then getting, 5 years of a cheap version of Mitchell Schwartz, which I mean, you never know these guys are going to be all pro players like Schwartz was. Obviously, you're not saying that right off the bat, but he has that type of profile as a tackle.
Right. So to close it out with mock draft 2.0, the Super Bowl champions, you had them selecting a guy that I have come to love in the defensive end, Azeez Ojulari from Georgia, who I had your Indianapolis Colts selecting at number 21. And then I had them taking wide receiver Elijah Moore from Ole Miss, who really just came down to this was another team. It was really hard to pick out what position they could go to because there's really not a lot of flaws. Even though they brought Leonard Fournette back, I don't love their running back room. I don't think this is what we think they're going to do, not what we think they should do. I think that they should have let Leonard Fournette be. And, if like in my situation here, all running backs are on the board. And I think this is a perfect position for Najee Harris and Travis Etienne to come in and make a gigantic impact, just give them the work to go on this incredible offense. But I don't think that's what's going to happen based off the fact that they did bring back Leonard Fournette, playoff Lenny, and that they do have Ronald Jones, and they did spend a third round pick on Keyshawn Vaughn. I think that they're pretty set with running back, at least for next year. They're saying that Antonio Brown and Tampa Bay is kind of, they're not in agreement on the money factor of the deal to where maybe that isn't as guaranteed as people thought it was going to be. And so, I mean, you've got Godwin and you've got Mike Evans in the fold for sure. And Elijah Moore, from a specialty standpoint, if you can let him line up in the slot, I think Elijah Moore can make as much noise as any receiver in this class from a year one standpoint if you let him do what he does best, which is work out of the slot. And I think, I mean, Tampa Bay they don't need receiver even outside of Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Like they've got good receiving options even outside of those guys. But I really just wanted to take this pick to be able to give some love to Elijah Moore and throw him in a spot to where I think he could succeed and be able to say his name in this first round, because I do think he's that good of a receiver as long as he does get to operate out of the slot.
Yeah, and I mean, this would also be a spot for a guy that's well versed in that Florida area for Kadarius Toney as well. That could be a great spot for him to land with his skill set there. Very similar type of offensive weapon. But I do have them taking Azeez Ojulari there. I think obviously they just keep building that pass rush, with Shaq Barrett there. Obviously JPP and some of those other guys are not getting any younger. So
Right.
they just want to keep churning out those pass rushing options there because they see, I mean, everybody kind of saw what it does to your team whenever you're able to attack a quarterback like that, like they
Sure.
did. And not even just the Super Bowl, it was the whole playoffs. So, so yeah, I think that would be a great option for them as well. Maybe, start him out as, that third down player, learn from some of those elite guys like JPP and Shaq Barrett to help refine his skill set some. And I think that would just be a fantastic pick for the player and for the team.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't have any. I mean, I've got him going inside the top 21, so I have no issue with the Bucks grabbing him at the last pick in the first round. So I like it. I mean, for the most part, bigger picture, we've got a lot of the same guys going in a lot of the same areas with a few differences, in which some of the differences you can kind of throw up to just forgetting about a guy being out there like you talked about with Devontae
Right.
Smith and Rashad Bateman. Some of those guys, I think we would be very similar if you insert them with some of the other players like Terrace Marshall Jr. and things like that. So for the most part, I think we're on the same page, and it's just a matter of we think we have an idea of what these teams might do, and we truly have no idea. Trying
Yeah.
to,
Yeah. Whenever this comes out, and I mean, and I'm sure too, like we're gonna get YouTube comments and stuff like that about,
I'm looking forward to it because
yeah.
the first NFL mock draft 1.0 was the first time I got backlash from somebody like that. I had no idea who it was. Like I'm used to like our friends telling us we don't have no idea what we're talking about. But I finally had a random person tell me that I had no idea what they're talking about. And guess what, Giants fan? You didn't like that I had pass rush last mock draft, and I got some more pass rush coming for you with the same exact guy. So eat your heart out. Your pass rush still sucks, even with Leonard Williams coming back. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope that guy's back for 2.0 to see, to tell me how dumb I am all over again for 2.0. But yeah, that's the funnest part about all this is all of us pretending like we have any idea what these teams are going
Yeah.
to do,
Yeah,
and then
these mocks, and especially that final mock that we're going to do the week before the draft, which really we're only 20 something days away from it. We're right there at the edge, and
so
it's
close.
so exciting. So we do have our final mock draft coming, and I promise, guys, Devontae Smith and Rashad Bateman will be on this next one.
No yard work for
Yeah,
mock draft 3.0.
yeah, I'll make sure I take that Monday off and get my mind right, because it's just been super busy. I'm in the middle right now of tilling up our flower bed. We have a very large flower bed out here in front of the house that I've been tilling up all day and ripping up, weed fabric and just a lot of work. And then on top of that, we have a spare car we keep in the garage just for driving around and not putting too many miles on the truck. And took that into the shop and had to get it fixed today, and then I took and got it washed. So I've just had a long day of yard work and just I've been super busy. So my mom, was focused on that whenever I was doing this at the same time. So I promise Devontae Smith and Bateman will be on the next mock draft. So don't attack me too hard right now. But
Hey, no,
even without those
there's
guys, I think everything worked out pretty well.
well, and I was reading right before we hit record. I was reading. I think it was Todd McShay put out his most recent mock draft, like literally just like minutes before we went live, and apparently, I don't know if it's like I mean these guys are a lot more tapped in than we are. Obviously, they had like we were talking about like pick 20 with the Bears, where like he was talking about something like they've already got. Um, Darnell Mooney, and so I don't know if they will take Kadarius Toney, and there's really not anybody else to be had in this conversation. And we're talking about Rondell Moore and Rashad Bateman and Terrace Marshall. We're all still on the board, and they're talking about Toney being like on another level
I've
from
heard a lot
them.
of I've
So
heard a lot of
I
Tony
mean,
hype.
clearly we're not on the same flight path as what the ESPN insiders think NFL teams are on, to where apparently Kadarius Toney is a lot higher than how either one of us feel about him. So
Yeah.
it's going to be really interesting to see how it shakes out because clearly there's no question that the guys like that at ESPN are much more tapped into what NFL teams are thinking than we
Well,
are.
I mean,
So
possibly you never know. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we've said on this show that's kind of come to fruition.
I know a couple
Well,
days, like a one
yeah,
day, 2 days later,
one or
and
two
then
days after
bam.
we mentioned
Yeah,
it on the
it's kind of
show.
funny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I mean, who knows? Maybe just a couple guys on a random podcast might surprise you.
Just I can't wait, man. This is my first ever NFL draft to where I've not only done one, but I've done two, and then in the
Three,
near
yeah.
future to come, we're gonna do three mock drafts. Like I've never done a full first round mock draft of any NFL draft, and I'm gonna do three of the same draft, before this one
And then
happens.
you
So
get to watch it just get absolutely
yeah, I,
annihilated on
I'm
draft
I'm
day.
so excited to get to burn to get to put it up in flames on
Doing
draft
mock
day.
drafts is very much like doing a March Madness board where you're just throwing things that might stick and
Yeah.
you just hope. Um,
Right. Right.
so
Speaking of, congrats to Baylor.
did they end up pulling it out? I know
Yeah, they
they were
did.
up by like 20 when I looked earlier.
Yeah,
Uh,
they ended up beating them 86-70.
yeah,
Just, grown
I've,
men.
I've got, I didn't watch a single second of March Madness this year. I've actually got the White Sox and Mariners game going right now, so
Yeah,
much more
between
tapped into
that
baseball.
two, that's who I would pick between the two options too. So I can't fault you, but I watched a little bit of March Madness. I was watching the whenever Jalen Suggs hit that buzzer beater over UCLA. I was watching that. That was
Yeah,
lit.
that's one of the
That
games
was
that
lit.
everybody's saying that's one of the best games in the history of
I
basketball.
didn't watch the whole game, but I watched the
Um,
last few minutes on my phone with the app, and yeah, that buzzer beater was dope. It was really cool
yeah,
to
I mean, I've
see.
seen the replay, but that might be a game I might have to go back and check out and watch.
Yeah, it's probably I only watched the last probably like 10 minutes of it
Yeah, which
total.
really, that's really the only stuff that usually matters.
Yeah, it was definitely worth watching though. Yeah, I would recommend. But yeah, I mean, we're both Kentucky fans, and so with Kentucky not in the picture, March Madness is a little bit underwhelming. And then just the whole randomness and inconsistency of everything with COVID and things like that. I mean, it was just
It's a
you
tough
you
year.
you already knew that it was going to be like the most unpredictable of unpredictable years, and I would say with how things shook out, that
Yeah,
stood. Which I mean, granted, there was still their fair share of number one seeds that made it in and things, but
yeah, you had two
um,
number one seeds in the title game, so
right, yeah. So yeah, a little bit of chalk once you got to the end, but definitely a rocky road to get there. And so college basketball was a little weird this year, but um, it has come and gone without us hardly even talking about it. So we can move
right.
right on without having to talk about that.
It's
See you
baseball
next year.
season.
Yeah, it is NFL draft season. It is baseball season, and that is really all that has. Literally, the NFL draft and baseball is the only thing that
And,
has occupied my mind for the
yeah,
last
and
couple
I'm
months
super
now.
excited once the NFL draft, does pass here in 3 weeks or so. Just get ready because we got some fire ass fantasy content coming.
Oh yeah, yeah. So much stuff is going to be put to bed once the NFL draft happens, to where we can really dig into like rookie drafts with landing spots and startup dynasty drafts with landing spots, and the big free agents are out of the way, and the
Yeah, and we'll be
yeah,
doing,
by
we'll be
by
doing some live mocks
day
as
yeah
well. Too.
yeah by day two of the NFL draft, we'll be able to have most of the rookie landing spots, because most of the fantasy relevant receivers and running back rookies will go by day two. um, so yeah, we'll get to have a lot of fun. Hopefully we'll be able to have some of our guys from our fantasy leagues that we're in join us for some mock drafts and things like that. And doing some of those would be a blast on air. So yeah, there's about to be a lot of really fun fantasy stuff coming. Like May, June, July. The what most people consider like the dead period for fantasy is
Is
really
when
where
whenever
all the
we're getting
fun
started.
happens.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so we made it to the end. Thank you guys so much for listening once again. Thank you guys for so much for all the support. I'll let Andrew do the outro as always.
Yeah, another, these NFL mock draft episodes really tend to drag on. So if you made it all the way to the end, you're the real MVP. If you made it this far, clearly you had to somewhat enjoy what you heard. So be sure to go over to Apple, go over to Spotify, the Amateur Experts podcast, and be sure to, like, subscribe, whatever the preferred method is for those platforms. And then go over to YouTube. We do stream this stuff live with our ugly mugs talking about this stuff on YouTube. So you can go over to YouTube and watch our facial reactions along with the beautiful backdrops that we create, to where you don't even have to listen to the whole thing to find out what your favorite team picked. You can just go look at the backdrop and see what the picture says, and then roast us for that without even listening to our explanation, aka the Giants fan that did that on Mock Draft 1.0, who clearly didn't listen and just clicked and saw and talked shit based off what he said. So shout out to you. Can't wait to hear how mad you are about me still going pass rush in the first round. So go do some more of that. We're on YouTube, the Amateur Experts Podcast. We would appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel. Once you subscribe to the channel, it's going to give you an option to click the little bell to make sure you turn on notifications, so that whenever we do upload these videos, that you get notified of that. And then, of course, if you like the video, be sure to like the video. That is a huge thing for us. It really helps us out if you can like the video. If you comment, let us know where we got it right, where we got it wrong, what your team is actually going to do. We're active in the YouTube comments, so it doesn't have to be an audio and video thing for us to debate. We're down to get the Twitter finger working and and debate you in the comments too. So let us know where you agree, disagree, and let's have some fun leading up for the last month until the draft actually pops off.
Yeah, absolutely. So, with that being said, thank you guys so much for listening to another episode of the Amateur Experts podcast, and we will see you next time.